Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting. This is a regular meeting. It is Tuesday, June 6, 2023. It is 9:22 a.m. The session is set to go until 12:15 today. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We'll start our agenda off today with the review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for a meeting of June 6, 2023. So we'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Menser. Approval of the Tuesday, June 6, 2023 agenda. We have a presentation today, and that's the LGBTQ+ Pride Month.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. As a yearly event, this is the opportunity for you to declare the month of June as LGBTQ Pride Month here in Thurston County. I believe we have members of our community scheduled to come this afternoon to be part of this proclamation that will give you, each commissioner, the opportunity to provide your perspective on this proclamation. Jenny?
I do have confirmation, I believe it is from Flag, but they were scheduling conflict and can get here at about 2:20. So I was wondering if it'd be okay to maybe bump this item, just hold until they arrive today, or even move it to next week's agenda. And I can coordinate with them to come in next week right at 2 if possible.
Awesome. Any questions? No?
You're asking for a,
Whatever your preference is.
I'd rather put it till after public comment and do it today.
Okay, no problem.
I mean, if we're ready for it, it's this month, so.
Okay, so we'll switch it off. Okay. So then before that, we'll just have the opportunity for the public to address the board. Anything, County Manager?
No, for today, but next week, I will give you some perspective when you review the agenda for next week.
Okay. Yeah. Any County Manager's update?
Yeah, this afternoon I will start working, providing a perspective on the ordinance related to ban of the discharge of fireworks in Thurston County. So I will frame the resolution, I will frame the timelines, and also I will give you an opportunity as to when the recommendation from the fire marshal should be coming, one way or the other. Weather conditions as such, we attended the emergency seminar last night, and it's very telling. The fire danger conditions, not just in Thurston County, but perhaps in the whole state, are becoming somewhat critical. So all that will be taken into account. But again, I will start informing the public as to what the steps that we need to take if we ended up on a position to banning the discharge of fireworks. As you may recall, the resolution the board passed, it does not include banning the sale and distribution of fireworks. It's just a discharge of fireworks. There is also I just got an email from the sheriff's office, and if that is the direction the county is going, obviously puts an interesting position because they don't have the ability or the manpower to respond to the many phone calls that perhaps somebody may have, and that's always has been a little bit of an interesting challenge. The one and only time the county, since this ordinance was passed, that we banned the discharge of fireworks was in 2021. That was the only year that we banned the discharge of fireworks. In the past, we have been able to see the weather conditions that doesn't warrant the ban, but we'll see where it goes this year. Any questions? But I'll give you a little more this afternoon, a little more step by step as to what we need to take, what we need to do.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'd just like to hear what Kitsap County does.
There is a similar, passed an ordinance a number of years ago facilitating the ability to ban the discharge of fireworks given, weather conditions, et cetera.
Same kind of deal.
Pretty much the same, although it does, it requires even earlier, because it does go into the licensing of sort of stands and the sales of those as well. So
So you're covering, the sale as well, but what about, yeah, and you don't have reservations?
We do
You
two.
do have reservations. Do you cover the reservations with that ban?
No, we cannot.
So we're just banning certain groups who we're basically picking winners and losers again somehow. You
And,
know, not that that's, I'm just saying, it's just, how do you tell, the Lions Club that they
So
can't, when
those,
the next door they can?
so those organized events, such as the Lions Club, they're not included on the ban.
Well, they have sales, I'm referring to the Boy
Oh,
Scouts.
the sales of- yeah.
and So, yeah, the municipalities that have events or something like that.
And even larger groups, you know, let's say if the Lions Club has a fireworks event for the community, those will not be banned. It's just the individual discharge of fireworks is very specific.
It's a bugaboo. I mean, I will say we've in the past, we've gotten more public comment on the fireworks issue, maybe than most other issues we deal with.
And in fact, every year, you get in your inbox many emails from the both sides of the
Oh,
issue.
yes.
So I always go back to the public hearing. It was must have been May, June 2016. And that was one of the most interesting public hearings that I attended.
That was
I
your first
participating.
exposure to
That's
it,
right.
wasn't it?
And it was at that point, the board was considering banning the sale, distribution, and discharge of fireworks. Based on the public comment, we drafted this resolution on the spot that evening, and the board passed that resolution banning the discharge of individual fireworks if the weather conditions warrant.
When this comes up, when and if it comes up, could we be sure that we know what other jurisdictions are doing around, like mainly the municipalities and things to see, so we can attempt maybe at some consistency?
Yeah, the Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, there's a full ban on the sales, distribution, and discharge of fireworks. And that becomes an interesting feedback that we get, because as you know, sometimes the municipal boundaries is just across the street from neighbors. Some may be within the city of Olympia, some may be within the incorporated county. And that's probably what we see is across the street, they cannot discharge fireworks, and across the street, they can. So, and yeah, you're right, the consistency is an issue, but that's the current resolution that we have in place.
I know people that go to I mean, it's not about where you live, right? It's where you're discharging them. So I know people that drive a couple neighborhoods over and
Oh, yeah.
do them there.
Right.
Just because it's legal to do that, you know, so. But, yeah.
Always a problem.
So this is, as you know, we'll get plenty of feedback from the residents related to this.
I think sometimes it would ultimately, given that the sheriff's office doesn't have the ability to enforce because it's too large, boils down to education and partnership with the fire districts, et cetera, and getting that community awareness out there about the conditions and making choices.
Yeah, and that's the intent, is hopefully by June 20th, we'll get that's your last meeting, formal meeting. And that's what I'm hoping to provide a perspective, one way or the other. And you're right, and then we'll send a news release, and we'll do as much as public outreach as possible.
Have we ever communicated in writing with the tribal entities about our fire concerns, sales, you want to work with us, anything like that?
Becomes a little bit of a complicated. It's a sovereign nation, as you know.
I know.
And whether we can broach the subject on the
Well, we can
joint
talk about
meetings.
anything we
Yeah.
can talk about, can't we? I mean, we don't have
That
any
will be
authority
that,
maybe.
that
but
will be a good point of conversation at a joint meeting.
Maybe with the BIA or, with those folks that might be overseeing some of those. I don't know. I mean, if we're really gonna be serious about trying to impact one way or the other, I think we ought to go for it. Almost like the gun in your survival kit, almost, same kind of a deal. Not very pleasant to talk about, but it might be necessary.
But I'd like to remind the board does have an option to ban the sale of distribution of fireworks in the county.
Oh, yeah, except
You just have to go through a public
Except-
hearing.
tribal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, more to come, huh? More fun to come.
More to come.
Yeah, more to come. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on that? I realized I did not do introductions at the very beginning, so hopefully.
Everybody knows the commissioners.
But consent items A through D, 3A is from the auditor's office, and it's approval of voucher list for the week of May 8th.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Commissioner Mejia, Commissioner Edwards reviewed this item last week, but Commissioner Messer was excused. This is for your consideration, for you to consider approving the voucher list for May 8th, 2023 for a combined amount of $2,020,738.28. This item is on your consent agenda because we do not have any expenditures related to the tenant improvements of this building.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, just as a preamble, I guess, to my questions. Mr. Pettit got a hold of me, and I got this from him. Apparently, this is our voucher list on this particular topic on 3A. And this was brought to my attention, so I'm gonna ask staff, what are we doing where we've got, it looks like one check going out to DM Ventures, one for 79,000. And, well, we actually have more than that, because we have other lease sites. The other one for this building, though, these are for the 3,000 building here. The other one is 71,000, and that is same check number, and that's, one's under facility leases, one is under central services, and then the biggest question, I'd like to know what these are, but the biggest question is interest on long-term debt being paid to the tune of 49,000 to DM Ventures, and I guess that's the lease. And and apparently this is different than we've done before. Why would we pay interest on a lease? I've heard of lease payments that are included, but why are we doing interest on a lease to that?
Is that for this item today, Commissioners?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So let me take those questions. And if you like to delay this item for next week until we can get the answers that you're looking for. Obviously, I will not be able to provide the answers on the spot.
Yeah, okay, because we've got a staff person that's got a
So
situation.
I need
Could
to
we
follow
do
up.
that? Would that be okay with the?
Yeah.
So we'll move this to next week.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for,
Thank you.
Okay. Item B.
can I get the copy of this?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Item B is interlocal agreement with the Chehalis River Basin Flood Authority.
Yeah, you reviewed this item in the past, is for your consideration is to renew the interlocal agreement, multi-jurisdictional interlocal agreement related to the Chehalis River Basin Flood Authority. This particular agreement does not include any financial commitment from the county, and this is just the operating procedures of the Chehalis River Basin Flood Authority. The signing jurisdictions include Lewis County, City of Centralia, City of Chehalis, City of Napavine, the town of Peel, Grace Harbor County, City of Aberdeen, City of Cosmopolis, City of Hoquiam, City of Montesano, City of Polkville, Thurston County, and the town of Bucota. Those are the signatories of this particular agreement. Any questions?
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I don't have any questions, but I know Commissioner Mensah sits on that, so I kind of follow his lead on those things.
Next item is a new item that me and Commissioner Edwards decided to add on to the agenda for this week, which is the appointment to the Hotel Motel Commission with the idea that, not any concerns.
To give you a perspective, to the opportunity to comment on that, Commissioner.
Can you just give me a little, is this a reappointment or open seat, or is this one of the ones that the jurisdictions appoint to, or what's the, I don't remember this one. coming
I
up.
do think
This is a one from the TPA, so
This is a business representative.
yeah, so they, the person that sat on there beforehand, who no longer works at La Quinta, so they're appointing someone new. And this is one of the ones where they send in the recommendations, we don't really have much of a say. It's for the, promotion.
Oh, okay, just maybe the employee that replaced the previous. Okay, I don't have any problem. You guys.
Okay. And then item D from the treasurer's office, and we have Treasurer Jeff Gadman here with us today, to authorize the sale of tax title property via private negotiation to Carl.
Yeah, you reviewed this item last week, Commissioners. This is a 20-foot wide strip in front of this individual, Mr. Funds. And this became as a tax title exempt status back in January 2097. In a little bit of perspective to the benefit of the public, maybe 4 years ago, the Board of County Commissioners entrusted the Treasurer's Office to be very diligent and strategic as to how we're going to be taking the tax title properties and put them into the property tax rolls by private negotiations, or perhaps going through the normal surplus process. County Treasurer Jeff Gadman has been extremely effective on this, and you've seen those items come in before you quite often. In this particular case, it is a property that is at 0.6 acres. And again, it's a 20-foot strip. And the total value of this negotiation is $864.50. And that includes all the fees and the associated transactions. And Jeff Gadman is here to further explain this item.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. County manager covered this in great detail. Yeah, this is a 20-foot strip that lies between Mr. Thun's property boundary and a railroad right of way, and I suspect it was just a leftover during property division processes where somebody just didn't quite write the legal description to cover the entire land area. So anxious to get this back on the tax roll.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
And by putting this back on the tax rolls, that helps all the other taxpayers in Thurston County by picking up its fair share, you might say,
Yeah,
where it has not been that case before.
exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Munster.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And no need to attend this afternoon since there's a consent agenda, but you're more than welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to department items. Item 4A is the 2022 through 2023 budget amendment number 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. You reviewed this item last week. This is the last step for you considering approving the budget amendment that includes additional expenditures on the general fund of $1,527,422. And the combined other funds is $17,920,769. This is the result of advertising, making available to the public the preliminary decisions the board made. And at this point, it's for you to take this action. Last week, Commissioner Edwards, I believe, had some questions. I follow up with them, and I'm open to any additional questions the board may have. And I believe I addressed your questions, Commissioner.
No questions, thank you.
Questions? Okay.
Nicole, anything to add?
No, I think you covered it well. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item 4B, BoCC Media Contract Amendment Extension.
Thank you, Commissioners. This item, you took an early action this year to extend the current contract with BoCC Media to that ends on January 30, 2023. This particular item is for your consideration to extend that contract for an additional 6 months with an end date of December 31st, 2023. There is a lot of elements going on and a lot of discussion going on related to the future participation of the jurisdictions with the TC Media. There has been several meetings. There is a follow-up meeting this coming, I believe, next Friday between the mayors and the chair. The result of that meeting will put me in the position to bring this item to you at a later date, depending how the jurisdiction is moving forward. And the reason that I'm stating the jurisdictions moving forward is you heard that perhaps if one jurisdiction steps out of the TC Media contract, TC Media will not be able to sustain. And I believe you had a great conversation, and I provided you with a copy of the financial plan and some different scenarios that I received from the TC Media executive during your planning session of April 28. So more to come on this, and the reason as to why staff is requesting the board to extend this contract is to give a little more time to work through those scenarios, and at some point we'll bring a proposal before the board related to this particular contract. Any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Has there been any developments since our last meeting with respect to the other jurisdictions? I know I heard secondhand that in Lacey they were more supportive, or at least, I don't know, maybe the mayor was advocating for a different approach than what we were discussing. So I'm just, and I know we were talking about Olympia and Tumwater being sort of, everybody kind of waiting to see what other jurisdictions would do. So has there been any breaking updates?
Yeah, well, I believe at this point, if Madam Chair, correct me if I'm off on this, the cities of Olympia, Tumwater, and the county are in the position to take a different route related to TC Media. That discussion happened over a week ago with the mayors involved. Mayor Ryder was not involved in that meeting, couldn't attend, but staff from Lacey was in attendance. This past week, I believe Mayor Ryder made a statement during the mayor's report on the council meeting, which aligns to what specifically what you stated, Commissioner Menser. So that is where we are at this point. And next Friday on the meeting with the mayors as well as the chair of the board, this item is going to be coming up and have the opportunity for the jurisdictions to discuss.
We haven't made a decision yet,
No,
though, right?
no.
We just, I know we're
No.
definitely strongly
We're
thinking
just
about it.
working through the jurisdictional recommendation. That's what I'm saying. Hopefully after next week's meeting, I will be in the position to bring a proposal to the board. Because it has to be all or nothing. And that's how I see this. I think all the jurisdictions or none of the jurisdictions. Like anything to add, Madam Chair?
Yeah, I mean, even if just one jurisdiction falls out, I mean, that's the end result is just, and so it really has to be an all or none situation.
What has Lacey got in mind? Have they revealed that yet? Just they're going a different direction. They haven't said they're going to do X, Y, or Z or contemplating doing X. Because I guess, if we all need to go the same direction and it won't work if any one of the jurisdictions pull out, I'd like to know what the other option is the other jurisdiction is contemplating and see if maybe that does fit. I mean, without, so I'm all for extending this until we get it worked out, if Madam Chair is in agreement with that, because you've been there.
Yeah, and so I'm in agreement to extending it to December 31st because it will give, whatever way we decide to go, it will give TC Media enough time to, you know, do whatever they need to do, decide to go one route, or for us to see what we need from TC Media if we decide to go another route. So this just gives us ample time to make a decision and to keep having those conversations with the different jurisdictions. I don't think Lacey has something planned that's different necessarily. You know, what I've heard from Mayor Ryder has just been, you know, just, I think similar to the comments that what he said.
So are they thinking about just doing away with the program in total, or?
So I really don't want to,
Okay,
you know,
well, that's
take
fine.
the-
Okay, well, we have 6 months to work on.
yeah, hopefully
Sounds
less than that.
Okay.
I'm hoping that in the next 3 weeks, I can bring a proposal. And since this is related to a contractual conversation, I'm planning to have this in an executive session for you to hear all the details and as well as for you to ask any questions.
If I mean, my memory is they could survive one jurisdiction, but not two.
I
The
think
only
it-
jurisdiction they could survive is
Tumwater.
Tumwater.
If Tumwater pulls out, they can survive. But if Olympia,
Lacey or the county.
Lacey or the
pull out.
county pull, they cannot survive. I mean, they cannot survive on their current model. So they have to build a different model. That's what it is.
I do have one quick follow-up on that. Is there some kind of a licensing issue that goes along with one of the companies that are providing service to the residents around the county? I mean, is there some requirement that they help with this? There used to be a requirement that they help, and now that's expired or something?
So
Seems
not
like
that I
they
know.
used to kick in money or gave space, but they gave TC Media
Yeah.
space.
So what
to-
perhaps what you're referring to, Commissioner, is the public access
Yeah,
component
maybe
of
that's
that.
it.
That may be probably what you're referring to. And perhaps that is where, I believe what my perception, Mayor Ryder is keen on, the public access element. And I believe on the planning session, when I provided to you the many different financial plans included some of that component of the public access. The public access is not a requirement by the local jurisdictions, has been something local jurisdictions have contributed. But as you may recall, public access in the environment has changed, the model has changed. Social media is changing, everything is changing. And public access is no longer just focused on how TC Media is exercising that.
I guess more to come.
Are commissioners comfortable with moving with this item forward?
Yeah, this item's a no-brainer.
Next is community planning and economic development. Item 5, a set up public hearing for Olympia Joint Plan update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On June 6, 2023, the Board of County Commissioners had a brief briefing related to the joint plan with the City of Olympia. And that will be the elements related to the UGA within the unincorporated area of the county, Olympia UGA. The City of Olympia and the Thurston County Planning Commission held joint work sessions back in October 11 and 26 of 2022 to propose the amendments. They held a joint public hearing on November 30, 2022. And the post-hearing, they had a conversation on January 25th where they provided a series of recommendations. The Thurston County Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the joint plan. The second recommendation, the Thurston County Planning Commission recommended the amendment of Thurston County Code 23.05, which is the residential district, to remove the grocery store requirements and in a community-oriented shopping center, and that is located on at the intersection of Yelm Highway and Ridge Road. And also the City of Olympia Planning Commission recommended approval of the joint plan. The City Council of Olympia made the recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on April 19, 2022, recommended unanimously approving and accepting the Planning Commission recommendations on this plan. In this particular items for you to consider setting a public hearing for July 25th, 2023 at 3:30. Leah?
That was an excellent summary. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Leah. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munson?
I want to get my terminology right, Leah. So like at one of the recent briefings, I sort of understood for the first time that what I call joint plan is really two different things. And it's what you call the joint plan. And then the second thing, I want to make sure I get the right word. Is it the development code updates? Is that the right phraseology?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah, they're actually two separate documents, two separate processes. The joint plan is the equivalent and in fact an element of the comprehensive plan. So it contains the vision, the goals and policies for future development in the next 20 years. And subsequent to the adoption of the joint plan, we begin work on updating any development codes.
Okay, great. And I just wanted to clarify that because there might be folks out there who had the same impression as I did. And so when it comes to the development code updates, what's our timeline for that piece of this project?
Well, it's a long process because I'm doing the 3 joint plans for the 3 North County cities. I'm currently working on the Tumwater Development Code. And now that the Olympia joint plan will likely be adopted by the end of the year, I will begin working on that development code, but I have lots of other projects. The city has other projects. It can take a year or so probably to get that updated.
Like, for example, Tumwater, because I remember when you started that, is that one closer then?
It is closer. I'm wrapping up my first review of the entire development code chapter. And then we need to discuss some differences with the city of Tumwater. So those will occur in meetings. And then we'll take it to the Planning Commission. We'll have a public hearing. You know the process.
Yeah, very detailed work, but very important. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't have any questions, Leah. I thank you.
Thank you.
Some of my procedural questions last week. Okay, moving on. Item 5B, set a public hearing for the Terry Open Space Tax Program application.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Board of County Commissioners was briefed on May 24th, 2023 for a proposal related to 12.84 acres to be put on the open space significant wildlife habitat area. And that is the open space program under the Office of the Board of County Commissioners. This particular request may result in a potential 50% reductions on the market value, and as a result, the property taxes calculations will be reduced as well. The Planning Commission reviewed this item during the work session on April 5th, 2023, and a public hearing was held by the Planning Commission on May 3rd, 2023. Following up a work session with the Planning Commission recommended unanimously 8-0 to recommend approval of the Terry Open Space application. Before the board can take an action on this particular matter, you need to hold a public hearing to allow any other residents that may be affected by the tax break to provide you with testimony to you. So this is items to set the public hearing on June 20th, 2023 at 3:30 in the afternoon. Excuse me. Any questions?
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munster?
No.
No questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you, County Manager. You covered all the bases and I have nothing to add.
Okay. Public Health and Social Services, item 6A, authorization to issue a request for proposals related to affordable housing and behavioral health facilities contracts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request related to issuing a request for proposals to receive applications where we're going to be distributing funding for the combined county, city of Olympia Home Fund, the Federal Home Investment Partnership Act, also known as HOME, the American Rescue Plan, ARP, different from the ARPA funds that the county is currently dealing with. Affordable housing, that will be the substitute House Bill, as we know, 2060, as well as the substitute House Bill 1406, which is related to document recording fees. The Regional Housing Council provided a recommendation for the Board of County Commissions to recommend and approve a request for proposals. The total maximum amount that we currently have is $5,525,401. The combined county and Olympia Home Fund is $3,075,000. $1406 is $900,000. The Home ARP is $1,450,000, and the 2060 funds is $100,000. And as a result of this process, we'll receive recommendations if the board approves issuing the request for proposals. Those applications will be reviewed by the subcommittee with the Regional Housing Council, and those recommendations will be reviewed by the Regional Housing Council as a whole. And the result of that review will provide recommendations for a final award of those contracts to the Board of County Commissioners at a later date. Tom?
That's an excellent summary, but I'm happy to help answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Is there a dollar amount affiliated with this activity?
$5,525,401.
Thank you.
Overall.
Questions, Commissioner Munster?
Tom, the home fund amount, if I remember correctly, at least with the county's portion, that started coming in September, right, of last year?
Yes, that is correct.
So the amount that the county manager cited, it reflects what period of time, like September to March, 6 months worth, or just starting in January, or what does that reflect? Because that's a lower amount than, kind of we were, and it's not the annual amount we were looking at when we started it.
Yeah, so we are projecting that based on the annual amount. So we're keeping the October through November as a fund balance. So it's not the full amount of the home fund. So we are setting aside about 1.3 million of the local home fund for homeless services dollars that we'll be awarding separately. So this is for capital dollars. We're also, the Regional Housing Council we've set aside to be determined a project with Southport Financial. And so whether those will be used for home funds or not is still to be determined. But so we've set aside, that was another $1.3 million. So in total, about $2.6 million from the local home fund are not included in this RFP.
Okay, but the pool from which you've set aside the 2.6 or whatever is a collection of what period of time?
For this year, 2023.
Oh, okay, it's just you're just projecting out what you expect.
Correct.
And then, okay.
Tom, do you want to go over kind of why we had to set aside some funding for homeless services?
Yeah, so for homeless services, the legislation allows up to 40% or 30% to be used for services. So because of the reduction in document recording fees that we've been experienced with higher interest rates, we use the local home fund to make up for the reduction in document recording fees. Was the decision of the Regional Housing Council. So that was about $1.3 million. Also, the other $1.3 million was Southport Financial came to the Regional Housing Council this spring. they had an application that required local leverage. They're going to be creating a substantial number of affordable housing units. They were applying for low-income housing tax credits from the state, a 4% tax credit. That application was due in April. So the Regional Housing Council made a preliminary commitment of 1.3. They did not identify the fund sources. We've held back those, the local home fund in the event that was the most logical fund source to use. So in total, we were projecting around 4.5 million of the county home fund and around 1.2 million from the city of Olympia for this year. So that's 5.7 million. Roughly, we've taken off about 2.6 million. So that leaves us with about the 3.1 million. Up, rounding off numbers a little bit there, why it's 3,075,000 under this RFP.
Thank you. And just on a separate note, I guess, since you brought up Southport, I wanted to have just a really brief conversation about that. Since I've been tracking this project, I think it would be a great project for our community. One of the things I learned is the grant that they applied for the state, they didn't make it. And what I've learned is that this specific grant, it's usually been a lot of the funds have been directed towards King and Snohomish County, is what I've learned. And so their lobbyist has reached out and just started having preliminary conversations with us about possibly they're going to do a last push to try to get funding for this project, because that will also affect the federal funding that they're after. And so they're going to be requesting a letter from the board to support this project, and just let them know that, you know, we put, you know, our funding forward for this project because, you know, we believe in it, and, you know, hoping that the state will support that. So just as a heads up for commissioners on this, and just as a heads up for Tom, because me and Tom hadn't talked about it yet.
Thank you.
One more question. Tom, the Olympia total that you gave that's going into this set of recommendations, that excludes, I know they have like a set aside for projects that they're already supporting. So that would be like, I think you said 1.2. That would be like what's available for additional for these projects, not counting.
Correct.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item B is to approve contract amendment number 2 with the Washington State Department of Commerce for the right-of-way initiative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we have been discussing with the board, the Washington State Department of Commerce, and related to the right-of-way initiative, they will allow us to, you know, sweep the camps located in the state's right-of-way. The result of that is the state funded the purchase of a hotel, motel in the Hosbury area within the Lacey city limits. And that was included on the initial contract, as well as funding the operations of that hotel. I believe you saw it on the Olympian. I believe over the last few days that this hotel will come online to start providing services here in the next couple of weeks, which is a huge lift and help to our region. So knowing that, the Department of Commerce has reached out to the county to add additional money to the existing contract on the amount of $2,100,000 to continue to provide 24-hour continuous stay shelter and support on this for an additional 3 years. And that really is a great deal. The Low Income Housing Institute is the organization who is managing this hotel. But this is really the result of a regional coordination between the jurisdictions in the county to get us to this point. So, and again, this is another success story into getting additional money. Obviously, this will not resolve this complex issue, but certainly is one step forward as to how we need to address this in a coordinated approach encampments here in the county. Tom?
Yeah, thank you. I did want to provide one update on the timing. I know it was publicized that they were hoping to open the what we're calling Maple Court on June 19th. We learned this morning that that is actually going to be delayed a little bit. After the remediation that was done, they had to go in and do some inspection of the sprinkler system, and they found that there was need to be some replacement of sprinkler heads and lines. So it does look like the opening of that will be delayed by a couple weeks until July. So we don't have a specific date. They're waiting for the sprinkler contractor to provide that information. So did want to, unfortunate news for that. So, but did want to provide that update to everyone. But otherwise, happy to answer other questions.
Dang.
Yeah,
Thanks for being Debbie Downer.
sorry.
Commissioner Edwards, question.
I'd just like to clarify that about halfway down where it says initiative to add 2.1 million in funding, that's from the state or
From the State
Fed?
Department of Commerce.
I don't know that it needs to say that in the verbiage, but I just want to make sure it is from the state to bring the total amount to 12.9. Okay.
Maybe we can certainly add additional
No,
clarification
no,
as you
I
see.
don't think it needs, as long as it's part of the record.
Okay. Questions? That is a bummer. I feel like every time we get close to the finish line, it gets extended a little bit more. So does that mean the deadline for everything gets pushed down a little bit, Tom? So when is the cleanup and everything expected to take place now?
Yeah, so Lehigh told us this morning that as soon as the sprinkler repairs are done, they're ready to move people in. The rooms are ready, so that will be a process. It will take, probably 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to start with those folks along the Slater-Kenny right of way will be the priority, but that will be right where I don't want to commit to anything publicly, but looking at kind of 6 to 10 people a week moving into the new location. So it will be a process to move people to clear that site.
Tom, and the overall capacity of this facility is?
There's 122 rooms in the facility.
Okay, questions?
A follow-up on that, Tom. They still don't have any prioritization for like single parents with kids, maybe domestic violence, veterans, locals. It's kind of those that can figure out to get to the front of the line, get the service. Is that it? We still don't.
So for those along the Slater-Kenny right-of-way, we've been collecting names of people who are there. That by name list is closed, so we're not adding anyone to that list at this point. The priority, and this comes from the state, is those folks who are on the by name list who are currently along the Slater-Kenny area will be prioritized for, they will be offered housing at the Maple Court. There will not be families in this location, so we need to identify if there are families. We will be working to identify alternative locations for families to move into. This is intended for single adults.
This doesn't have county money in this 12 million anyway, does it?
No.
Thank you.
Tom, a quick question. You said 120 rooms. Is it planned for single occupancy or will it be multiple folks per room?
It is possible that a couple, so if there's a married couple, could occupy one room. So I would expect a majority of those will be single occupancy, but some of them could be couples.
Thank you.
Okay. No further questions? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And then item C is the 2023 homeless services contract.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is related to the consolidated request for proposals that was issued back in February 2023. They include funding sources of the Consolidated Homeless Grant, the Essential Needs and Human Services Fund, the 2163 funds, the eviction prevention rental assistance. And right now, the Department of Commerce may be changing the assignments of the contributions to this particular funds, but at this point, the Regional Housing Council is providing recommendations based on the current dollar amounts that we have in place. And the Regional Housing Council provided recommendations for you to consider awarding grants to the following organizations: Interfaith Works for $50,000, Family Support Center of South Sound for $439,902, Community Youth Services $151,966, Partners in Prevention Education $533,080. Thurston County Food Bank has a combined amount of just about over $100,000. Catholic Community Services, the Rochester Organization Families, $122,000 and $15,000, respectively. Olympia Mutual Aid Partners, $27,000. And also an additional grant for the Olympia Mutual Aid Partners for an additional $8,000, together for $32,000, and Community Services for $16,000. Those applications were reviewed by the subcommittee of the Regional Housing Council, and the Regional Housing Council provided a formal recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners on the May 24th meeting. And Tom's here to add additional perspective.
Did we get the little chart? Did we get the chart?
No, but
Okay.
Hey, Tom,
Yes.
last week, Commissioner Mejia asked for a chart of the
Yeah.
awards. Was that put in place?
So we did amend the AIS. So in the table in the AIS, we did include a header. So for the Lived Experience Steering Committee, we show the Interfaith Works for $50,000. The Eviction Prevent Rent Assistance is broken down for the total of $1,124,948 for those awards. And then the Basic Needs Human Services Fund. So we tried to do that. The AIS formatting limited us a little bit. Happy to provide a separate chart if you would like something separate outside of that.
We'll give you copies of that before this afternoon, Commissioners. My apologies.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
And this is for the 1.5 million. 1.5?
Yes, in total, that's all of the
total.
awards is
Yeah.
just over 1.5 million.
That funding comes from where?
So this is a mix. The eviction prevention rent assistance money comes from the state. It is a document recording from the state. The basic needs is from jurisdictions. This is a 0.1% sales tax. Used to be known as the Community Investment Partnership Health and Human Services Fund. It's now known as the Human Services Fund. So this is something that's been in place for the last, 15, 20 years or so, that jurisdictions contribute a portion of their sales tax for human services needs that's been awarded every year. The Lived Experience Steering Committee is from 2163. That is the local document recording fee. So 3 separate fund sources within the list of awards here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no questions? Okay. Thank you. No questions for
Thank
me.
you.
Okay, Public Works. Item 7A is a resolution to amend the 6-year transportation improvement program for the 2023-2028.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is related to the specific project located on the SR 507 Neville Road to build a runabout. This has been a coordination with the state legislature this past legislative session, which includes 3 runabouts. One is the 507 and 702, which Pierce County is going to do that. And the other one is 507, and the city of Yelm will be taking care of the
City of Yelm will do the Bald Hill
the Ball
intersection.
Hills, and the county will take the lead in building this particular improvement. We held the public hearing May 23rd, 2023. No public testimony was received, so this is the last action that you may consider in amending the TIP. As I remind the board a couple of times, this particular action to amend the transportation improvement program requires a unanimous decision by the board.
I have nothing to add, except we finally got there. This is the last time you'll hear me talk about this TIP
No,
amendment.
it will not be the last time.
Questions?
And you were looking for holdout?
Yeah, I was like,
I don't have any questions.
just make Matt sweat a little bit.
But also there's a couple of steps. This afternoon, you also may consider amending the budget, which includes this funding, step number 2. And also you held a public hearing where you provided, received public testimony, which you didn't receive anything, on amending the CIP. In the CSO, those 3 elements need to be concurrent, although the CIP requires a little bit longer comment period. So the CIP amendment action will be coming to you after your summer recess.
Questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, item 7B is contract award for analytical lab testing services contract.
As you may recall, the waste and recovery center, the work is where we have a closed landfill. And this closed landfill has been in place since April 2000. The requirements of a closed landfill we need to monitor by providing water samples of the groundwater, the leachate, the landfill gas, and stormwater. Obviously, those testing requirements we do not have the experience to do that in-house, so we need to go through the request for to secure a contract to provide those services. So on March 30, 2023, we received 2 proposals, and the recommendation from staff is to award to AM Test Incorporated. It will provide those services. The contract goes for 5 years, 4 years as a base, and an additional year as an option. And the overall ceiling of the contract is $1 million. And the way that I'm saying a ceiling, because that's, we're not going to be most likely spending all that. It all depends on the number of testings that we need to do, and we have negotiated that contract on those terms. And that is the action for your consideration this afternoon. Gerald is here to add additional perspective or ask any questions.
Good morning. Oops, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'd like to add one thing, that all contract expenditures for the landfill sampling is revenue from the solid waste tipping fees, and then all contract expenditures for water and sewer utilities is funded through the utility rates.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I guess now I'm curious. There's 2 sets of testing going on. One is for the landfill, and one is for the sewer utilities that the county oversees.
Wastewater.
That's correct.
But the total amount, so there's going to be a mixed fund here, and the total amount won't be exceeding this over the 5-year
The
period.
ceiling of $1 million maximum.
And we had 2 bids.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Okay, no questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7C, right-of-way vacation of the entire alley located in Block 4, Rights addition to Rochester.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week, Commissioners, and this is a consideration of vacation of a plat that was recorded back, portions of a plat that was recorded back in November 26, 1910. The county examiners considered this request and provided recommendation for the board to approve this particular vacation. Under the Thurston County Code 1336030, we request that each individual who is benefiting from the road vacation to compensate the county. In this case, the amount is $20,140, and I believe we have already received the funds. So this is the last step that the board may consider to finalize this particular vacation. And the underline of any vacation in the county is when we have right-of-way that has not been open for public use. In this particular case, it has not been open for public use since November 26, 1910. Right?
That's a great summary and here to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Mentor? Okay, and then that will conclude our agenda for June 6th. Oh, we'll have some standing items that we'll review. Okay, next is the review of Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for a meeting of June 13th, 2023. We'll start off with, call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards, approval of the Tuesday, June 13th, 2023 agenda. Then there's an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
We'll continue to update on the progress of the fireworks ban as we discussed earlier today. Or potential fireworks.
Do you want to talk about the other potential public comment that we will receive?
Oh, yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. As have become to acknowledge that the members of the union, employees union, may be coming to provide testimony to the board. We do expect to have significant participation from employees. And those are the current contracts that were in negotiation. I appreciate that heads up, and also I appreciate the union representatives as well as the employees to give their perspective to the board. But as you may know, any contract negotiations cannot be done in public. And in fact, those contract negotiations right now, we are going through mediation, and that is the process that we go through in order to reach a compromise between what their elements they present and what the county has presented. So this is an ongoing process. As a result of the public hearing, if you'd like to hear additional status of the mediation, I can certainly schedule a follow-up executive session. But unfortunately, based on the public testimony, if that is what my assumption is, we will not be able to respond on any states of the negotiations of those contracts.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I just wonder, and all the public comment, or all the organized comment maybe is coming on the 13th, maybe, and we're not expecting any today, is that it? So they can kind of muster things, is that?
So my understanding, the notice that we were given is for next week, but who knows, you probably may start receiving today.
Could we, I don't know what my seatmates would say about this, but for those contracts that are being negotiated and have not been negotiated for maybe several years, could we have at least be told the official inflation number since the last time they were negotiated, or the last time maybe the contract expired? I don't know how, but I'd like to know a little more about the detrimental inflationary effect on the employees. And I think that's just regular public information that we could go to. I'd just like to know.
Are you looking for the CPI?
Yeah, maybe the CPI.
Yeah, we can get the CPI.
Something that, why this has become a little more contentious than it's been in the past. And then another piece of my request is that could we make sure that the public knows that this is not an interaction or a negotiation with the board, but just receiving information, and there will not be any dialogue back and forth. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, we generally don't have that dialogue. Because oftentimes people don't understand why we just sit there and don't give any response. And I'd like to be able to say that right up front, that we appreciate your comments. We'll take everything into consideration, but this is not a argumentative dialogue back and forth about why this or that.
Madam Chair, set the stage of public comment, which includes some of those elements, Commissioner. And
Is there some correspondence going back and forth with the unions by any chance that from our mediation involvement? Or I just like to have people know how the business is conducted, because a lot of times they just don't know.
so at this point is, the mediation is continuing to occur.
And so we can't intervene in any of that.
My recommendation is not. And again, I appreciate the union members as well as the employees who might be coming next week to provide their perspective to you. But it really is becoming, I don't think, with all the respect, you should put yourself in the position to have open negotiations on that contract.
Oh, I agree with you, yeah. But I'd just like to have them know that it's, hey, we're in the middle of something, sorry.
And I think this forum,
Okay.
hopefully,
Well,
helps.
maybe my concerns will be self-evident with those that are watching. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder. I have my notes in front of me.
Okay, consent items, 3A through 3C. Item 3A is from the auditor's office and its approval of the voucher list.
Yeah, and this particular item is for the week of May 15, 2023, and this is for the combined amount of $2,471,402.89. And throughout review, we didn't find any expenditures related to the tenant improvements of this building.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions. It sounds like we're gonna add something else possibly.
Yeah, and we add the, this week's to next week, and at that time, I will provide answers to your questions, Commissioner.
Okay. Before we move on, there's on consent item 3C, I see it listed twice under
Yes.
3C and 6A. Are you going to cover?
Yeah.
Why?
It's a typo. It shouldn't be a department item. It should be a consent agenda.
So it's gonna be a consent
Yeah,
item?
it will be resolved next week.
Okay, 3B, from the Sheriff's Office, the Black Lake Regatta application.
This is a yearly event where the Sheriff's Office receives an application, in this case from the Pacific Northwest Boat Racing Association, to conduct a regatta, what it calls a hydroplane and flat bottom race to be held in Black Lake between July 8th and July 9th, 2023. The applications have met the requirements of the review, and the Sheriff's Office is requesting the board to approve the application for this event. Ray Brady is here to add additional questions, additional perspective, to answer any questions.
Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Ray, do you know how many years this has been going on?
On this particular one, I don't know the exact number of years, but it's been quite a while. This is an annual event. Yeah, many, many years.
Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Menzer? Okay. No questions for me, thank you. And then item 3C, Public Health and Social Services, it's to establish Fund 1540 Opioid Settlement Fund.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So item 6A on your agenda will be removed for next week. This is a consent item for you to establish a fund. In this case, it's 1540. As you know, we start receiving money related to the opioid settlements, and we need to make sure we put them on a specific fund for us to track, because some requirements how we need to track those. Related to this, been working with across all the 7-county region and having an in-local agreement in place to form this abatement opioid council, and as an umbrella. And following to that will be a abatement opioid council within the Thurston County region, and that is where all the money will be pulled, because the city's Lacey Olympian Town Water at least verbally, have agreed to bring all those funds to have a regional impact on this. So this is an administrative process that we need to create a fund so we can track the expenditures related to this particular allocation.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Is this gonna be going through the Board of County Commissioners or through the Board of Health?
I think it's going to be a combination. I believe the Board of Health should be involved in this process and assigning and determining how it will be. So we need to create first the structure to meet the requirements of this opioid settlement. And moving on into the actually structure of distributing the money, I do believe the Board of Health should take a key role on this, but eventually it's the Board of County Commissioners who has to determine the fiduciary responsibility to assign those awards, if that is.
So the Board of Health might make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
Could be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Menzer? I have a more, let's say, procedural question, how it gets chosen to be on the consent and not on a department under a department item.
Because it's just creating a fund number and doesn't have any financial elements, just establishing the fund. And traditionally, that has been the case in consent. But obviously, if you like to bring those items to any items from the consent into the department item, absolutely we can do that.
No, that's fine. The board is fine with it. Yeah, okay. Okay, moving on to department items. Item 4A, Central Services Award Design Build Contract for Thurston County Infrastructure Upgrades, number 25610.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is just one step in the process, getting closer to address the improvements at the courthouse campus. So you may recall the board authorized and we were awarded the option to proceed with the progressive design build option. So the board authorized to go through a request for proposals to secure the services of a contractor. They has the expertise and has all the many different staff and technical acumen to deliver the progressive design build. We received, I believe, 6 applications. There was a very strategic selection process that narrowed down to 3. And the result of that, following interviews with those 3 proponents, the staff is recommended for you to consider awarding this contract to Mortensen, Miller, Hall, and Fentress team. That's a team. There is a contractor, a designer, and an architect. The first step in the process is to begin the design, and this is for the amount of $1,642,500 with an additional 10% just in case deviations occur within the contract. First step in the process, this contract will put us in the position to begin the progressive design build strategies. And along the way, we'll bring specific details as to how that moves forward to the board when we have a little more specifics in terms of the specific lines on a plan that we know by buildings and building 6. And again, this is follow up the conversation, the direction the board has taken. And Tom Stremke is here to answer any questions, and we're here to add additional perspective.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
In the action, should it have the name of the outfit that we finally selected?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can add that.
We'll add it.
It just hasn't been added
Yes,
yet.
thank
We've
you.
got an EIS to come
Thank
up.
you for picking that up. We'll add the.
And where are they from?
They're from Seattle. It's a global contractor, but their Seattle office will be administered.
Their headquarters is out of Seattle. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Question? You asked 2 of my questions, but my other question was in regards to how was this outfit chosen? Was it by the lowest bid? What was
So,
the process for it?
so it was a point assignment. Can collaborate in that because the key on this is to make sure that we have the right firm to have the set of skills. So in this particular process, there is not a requirement to go with a low bidder. What we are going through the process, making sure we have the right set of expertise, somebody who has the experience in developing this progressive design build project delivery method. So, and that is the key of this selection process. So it was very comprehensive as to how the review team went through and assigning points and in interviews that determine the set of skills and experience that this particular firm brings in relation to others. So it is not a low bidder.
And so who was part of that review team?
Yep. Part of the review team was Tom, Rick Thomas, who is here with us, Jason Ash, and Tony Shaw. Those are project managers and facility managers within the county.
I guess I do it. Did Ty have any more? We went from 6, narrowed it down to 3, and then you made a final selection. And if it's not a low bid situation, so out of the 6 that applied, did they all have prior histories involving design build? Or was somebody a newcomer in the game? Or I'm just trying to get a sense of what's out there and how we move forward on this.
Well, the Progressive Design Build program is a newer program, so some have design build background, some have extensive projects, so it's a varying degree. So the qualification part was the first part, RFQ. That's how we developed our criteria, evaluating based on their past experience, current experience, and how they could address this project. Then it went to the more detailed description, so they have varying degrees of experience.
Then at some point, we made a decision to 3.
Yes.
The selection board did. Those must have been the ones you thought the most of. In the end, what was the variation on dollar amount? I mean, we're doing $1.5 million or $1.6 million here. So, I mean, was there a big spread?
The $1.5 million was in the RFP. That was the second portion of it. The 1.5 million plus the taxes is what we're going for now. Is they gave us a proposal of how they would administer this first part of the contract to bring it through the initiation part of it, verifying the existing design, or not design build, but the program study that we brought to you before from DLR. They're just verifying all those things. They're just telling us how they're going to spend that 1.5 million. Then they also gave us a fee proposal to do the rest of the contract.
So they might be, this outfit could be the same one that goes all the way through and expends maybe as much as $50 million by the time the project's over.
Yes, the construction and design portion of it is 37 million. The rest is soft cost in there.
But you're correct.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, this outfit, because they have the level of expertise to take it from cradle to grave in a way, from design to all the way to construction, and that's what this firm was chosen.
So we're granting something here, one of the steps for 1.6. Are we going to be having to, now the next step is 7 million, and one after that is 13 million. Are we going to be granting those dollar expenditures and with that same outfit as this moves along? And so you'll be back here in front of the board?
Correct.
Asking for that approval?
Yes.
I would like to know who the 6 applicants are, just for my own, get asked how many applications did we get, local versus elsewhere. If it's an international outfit, you say international outfit?
Yes.
It just happens they're in Seattle, could be out of New York, right?
Could be. I mean, they have a Portland office, they have a Seattle office,
Yeah.
but they,
But I don't know, I'm kind of interested in how the whole process, when you're talking about $50 million, how that is expended. You know, and it's taxpayers' money, and I'm not questioning staff, it's just that I don't wanna tell a constituent,
No.
"Oh, I don't know, you know, I don't
So
know who that
would
was.
you like to see as the list of the 6
Yes.
applications? Okay, we'll
Yeah.
bring those
And,
to you.
I don't know, you know, who, as we might have questions about this, should we be talking to Tom? Should we be talking to you? Should we wait until there's a public meeting and talk amongst the board? I don't know how that goes. This is a first for us as well. We've done a lot of other contracting, but we've never done this. So,
The county has never done this.
yeah, I mean, so
And,
it's
so
a
this is
new
This
process.
is a
So-
brand new process.
So,
And,
am I, I'm just wanting to be aware of what's going on. I wanna know how we're spending our money. Are we getting the best bang for the buck? And I know we kinda need to trust our staff, cause we can't micromanage these things, you know, but when we get asked as a board individually at some other function, I just hate that when I have to say, well, you know, I don't know who that was, or I don't know, what the difference was, or any number of questions can come to us as the buck stops here. And I would like to have that information. So whether that entails a bit more of a briefing than a 5-minute discussion here, for us, I'm good with that. But I need to know a little more when we're changing horses in the race, going to some new process.
Whatever the board wants to
So
get
is
in
that
terms of
okay with my
information.
seatmates, or do you have any of those concerns, or?
We're just trying to be diligent on the process that the board is, it's laid out to do.
Sure.
As you may recall, there's a little bit of a timeline, and that's what we're bringing before you. But if you like to have briefings and any additional information related to this
I
process,
think because the
Certainly.
process that we usually follow, and I understand what Commissioner Edwards is saying, we usually go with the lowest bidder, but in this one, there was more of that purview just because of the different requirements, right? And so I think just the understanding of that process and how that worked would be beneficial for the board, just, you know, because it is something new, it's something that we haven't done before, and I think it's just good information for the board to have on how it came to be and how we landed on this
so,
outfit, just based on the different requirements that were placed and
suggestion for the board to keep this item on your agenda next Tuesday. And in the morning, I will add an item for Tom to walk you through the selection process. Will that work? And if at that time, if that is not sufficient for the board, we can always remove this item until you feel
This is
comfortable.
gonna be ongoing for several years, though, right? So-
Absolutely. This is just the first step on the many.
I know one of them, you know, like, the first thing I get asked on a deal like this is, are those folks from here? You know?
Well,
right off the bat, you know?
it is a team.
I
It's
know,
not just an
I know,
individual.
but I
It is
mean,
a team.
all I can say now, I can at least say it's a Seattle firm now, but that, I didn't know that before you told me that, so. And we're really not at liberty to track down staff and, hey, I'm going to a Chamber of Commerce meeting and I might get a question on this. What's the deal? You know, so.
So we'll bring you a summary
Okay.
for next, if that is okay with the approach that I suggested.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm a little more familiar with this process because lot and intercity transit I followed projects through. But any information is good, you know, specific to this project. I'd like to make sure we stay on timeline best we can, but, so I have that concern, but, you know, board should get the information it wants to have.
That work.
Yeah, I don't wanna hold up the process.
Yeah.
I just wanna have a
So
little more knowledge.
we'll
base
keep this
about it.
item in your agenda for next Tuesday, and in the morning, I'll give you a little time. If you can draft somewhat of an executive summary of the process, the team, the 6 firms, narrow down to the 3, and that will be part of the information to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to community planning and economic development, item 5A, authorization to issue a request for proposals for habitat conservation plan training.
It's a request for your consideration to issue a request for proposals to secure the services of a firm. They can really develop an outreach and a training program related to the HCP. As you know, we have started embarking on the process to issue permits related to the Habitat Conservation Plan, and has given us an opportunity to see that perhaps we need additional expertise to develop a training strategy as well as communication strategies that benefits the applicants really to a great extent. So in a consistent way, so we can post it online. Everybody needs to understand what they need to do in terms of an application related to the HCP. That is the intent of this particular request. If the board approves, obviously we need to come back with a proposed contract for you to consider on the specific firm selected. But that is really the intent, is to have a more robust training, a more robust information that will benefit the public who might be encumbered by the HCP and Habitat Conservation Plan of the Pocket Gopher. Andy?
I don't have anything to add. I think that was a great summary.
Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Where would that funding come from?
That funding comes from the last grant that we had received from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So it's money that we have available from that grant.
And in the end, I don't know if there's been any discussion on this yet, but if it's one thing I'm hearing about the process, it is that there are a multitude of players apparently in Economic Development Department, and they all don't seem to lay out the same requests, and it sounds like this is going to solve that, but I'm hoping that we end up with at least several experts in the field, so to speak, so that an applicant can come in and get the same answer each time. Is that kind of where we're going?
That's absolutely on point. It's just to make sure that we provide consistent information. Even for us as a staff, is a learning curve because there's a brand new process for us. So, and I think having a consistent approach is how we communicate to the public, and also benefit the staff to be consistent as to how we provide the information to the applicants. That's absolutely on point, as you stated, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay, questions, Commissioner Munster?
Is this a program where we just say what we want done and we see what prices they set, or do we set a ceiling, kind of like one of the other contracts we had where we said, we're gonna spend 50,000, tell us what you would do with that 50,000, which sounded like the approach of one of the other contracts we just put out. How are we doing this?
I think it's the reverse, which is the request for proposals. It outlines the specific elements, what we need from a contractor, and the contractor will provide a budget related to the needs that we outline in the request for proposals.
And how much are we prepared to spend based on the leftover grant money that Andy was mentioning?
It's $100,000.
Thank you.
I don't know, I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around this, so it's.
I know, it's kind of like, I feel like we're so deep into it, you know, you kind of feel like it's something we should be able to communicate. I mean, we get asked about it everywhere we go, but it certainly is helpful to have it.
Josh and staff asked me to participate in an interview with an applicant. And for me, it was a very interesting process to go through. And for me, it built an appreciation of what the staff goes through and the diligence they go through. And because there's so many nuances within the process, I think it begs the opportunity to have a consistent approach as to how we communicate this. For instance, an applicant comes and have an interview with the staff, and the staff said, okay, this is the opportunities that you have to avoid, minimize, and this is the opportunities that you have as to how much this could cost you in terms of mitigation fee. So it's a very elaborate process. So I appreciate the invitation because it really opened my eyes in terms of what staff goes through. But there is an opportunity to be consistent on that. And this is the tool that perhaps we would like to exercise to reach consistency.
Mr. Edwards.
Maybe as a follow-up to the county manager, could we have in this group affected players? I don't know who that is exactly. I don't know if it's the Chamber of Commerce or maybe the master builders or some participation outside of government of folks that are actually dealing with this. And I don't know, right off the top of my head, I'd say, you know, at least an offer to maybe one of our land use attorneys that is very prevalent in working with some of these things, so that we get a little input from the end user rather than just have governmental folks in it.
So perhaps were you suggesting on the selection process, if the board approves this item, the selection process for the consultant to have industry representatives as part of that process?
Possibly. I mean, somebody that's in, I don't know about the selection process, that would be beneficial, but as we came up with, this is how we're gonna do business. We have some players. I'm not picking winners or losers, but I don't know, Heather Burgess is involved a lot in some of this stuff. So maybe ask them for input. I don't want a bill from Heather. I just want some input about how this whole thing fits together. Because oftentimes, you know, when it's people just trying to figure it out, they don't think about this question or this process or position that a citizen might bring forward. I'm just trying to get a little citizen involved.
No, that's a good suggestion, and I certainly that will be a good, prudent approach to take. Whether we involve in the industry on the selection process, or maybe a more fruitful will be involvement on the product, to make sure that product is adequate and meet the expectations of the industry. Certainly, that's part of the process. Yeah, good suggestion.
The contract does include rounds of testing of the materials. So, you know, producing videos and fact sheets and other types of materials, but included in that contract is that the successful applicant would test those items on audiences before they are finalized. So some of that's already written, and there's also flexibility within the RFP as written that as new ideas emerge, as staff works with that contractor, that we can be flexible on the types of things that we produce.
I like his suggestion. Sometimes it's really good to have that other, I think sometimes we tend to get, right, and it's not blaming staff, but staff are so in the weeds, right, that it's, I think just sometimes having that.
Absolutely on point, because yeah, sometimes the staff, we as staff tend to have a very narrow focus, and getting the industry perspective actually on point. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. 6A is stricken off, so Public Works will not be item 6. It's currently stated right now, it's 7A, contract award for Black Lake Belmore Road Bridge Approach Repair, CP number 77175.
This particular item, I believe the board has been discussing for quite some time. The result of the bid process, we received 4 bids. They will be they've responded to the bid process, and this is to address the approaches to the Black Lake Belmore Bridge, the road approaches. The selection process, the low bidder resulted in for you to consider awarding the contract to Active Construction of Puyallup, Washington, for $2,665,665. And we asked for an additional 10% contingency for a total of $2,932,231. The funding to complete this project is coming from the real estate excise tax 2 and the road fund. And the county engineer is here to answer the question, and Brian and the whole team.
County engineer, Brian, anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't have anything to add. I'll be happy to answer any questions. So.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, I think I've asked all my questions on this project. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mansur?
How does this compare to engineer's estimate or what we were projecting for this project, piece of the project?
Yeah, so the engineer's estimate was 3 million, just under $3 million. So it's about 250,000 less.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. No questions for me. Moving on to item 7B. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Right-of-way dedication resolution, Johnson Point, Hawks Prairie Roundabout Project, CP number 61364.
So I haven't used this word, but let me take you back to 2021. There was a couple of briefings related to this particular project back in August 31st as well as December 14th, where the board approved the right-of-way phase of this project on December 14, 2021. This particular roundabout and the location the Madam Chair outlined, which is Johnson Point and Hawks Prairie Road, which is a one-lane roundabout. It's a T intersection. It has an impact on the Woodland Creek Woodland Preserve, and so we have tried to minimize the impacts on the preserve. And this is the result of that right-of-way negotiation to acquire some of the right-of-way to improve, implement these improvements. That is not a negative effect to this particular preserve because most of the area affected by this is already disturbed areas such as the shoulders, paved areas, and uplands. There is no impacts to the wetlands. They are located on the Woodland Creek Wetland Preserve. Craig is seasoned as well as the county engineers here to add additional perspective.
That's a good summary. I would like to stress one thing that all land that we're asking for in this dedication is in previously disturbed areas. That does include paved shoulders, the gravel area, and uplands. None of the wetlands are disturbed during this project.
And I'll add that this is the last step we need to take before we can request permission to go to construction. So we'll be returning here in a couple months, requesting approval.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mansur?
I don't think I'm thinking clearly this morning, but I'm just not tracking what dedicating right-of-way means.
So basically, it's converting private property into public right-of-way.
So
it's converting Parks property into the county road right-of-way.
And we pay someone for that?
We own the property.
We own, Parks owns the property, so.
Changing the status of?
Correct.
Move a resolution dedicating right-of-way. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7C, set a public hearing to consider updates to the Thurston County Water and Sewer Utility Code.
Maybe I can cover Madam Chair's item 7C and 7D are related.
Okay, perfect. 7D is set a public hearing to consider a resolution consolidating the water and sewer utilities.
Yes, and this is related to the briefing the staff provided to you on May 31st, 2023, and on the approach to consolidate all the water and sewer utilities. So there's a couple of steps before you may take an action. One is for you to hold a public hearing on the potential changes on the county code, which is 1509, 1510, and 1512. And that is the item 7C for your consideration for July 18, 2023 at 3:30 in the afternoon. And the second item related to the same item is for you to receive public testimony related to the operations, which is repeal the resolution 09993 and establish a new rate and fund structure as a result of the Consolidated Utility Advisory Committee. And that is really two steps. One is amending the code, and one is also building the structure for the consolidated of all the water and sewer utilities. Unfortunately, you have to take two different steps on this because two different items that you may consider public hearings. Tim?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. I have nothing to add to the county manager's summary and would answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. I believe during the briefing, we talked about putting together some preamble, I guess, for lack of any other term that comes to mind, about the history of when these developments were developed and why we had this breakdown, if you will, of ability to provide that service to those property owners that live within those jurisdictions. So did we get something done on that?
Yes, but I think we can probably bring that as a staff presentation when you hold a public hearing. It will provide that little history related to.
That's fine.
Would that be adequate, or
Oh,
you like?
yeah,
that-
no, I think it's very crucial
Yeah.
for us to explain, this is not the county's initiative to put this all together in a way to raise rates on the citizens. It's because they bought into a system, most of them without ever knowing it, because most homes sell about every 7 or 8 years. And so they may have been sold 3, 4 different times easily. And nobody knows why. It's just that the county's sending them the bill and they don't know the history. So I want to make sure it's in writing, not just a verbal explanation at the hearing. I want something in the document that actually says for this development, that was put together in I think some of them are going to go all the way back possibly to the early 1900s, like Boston Harbor and some. I don't know the dates, but I really think it's crucial to let the public know that how this took place and the history behind it, and when the county had to step in because of state law that requires the county to step in and bail out these failing systems. So, because if we forget our history, I believe we tend to repeat that history. So having it in writing gives us a little preamble of what's going on, what happened. Let's try to prevent this from happening again, but allowing the current owners to know how this all came about. So they don't come to one of the commissioners and say, hey, how come you're doing this, that? They don't have a good understanding.
Very much.
Okay?
We'll prepare a document leading to the public hearing. Okay.
Thank you.
So, I guess we've been working on this for a while and I've been pretty supportive all along, given what I've seen, but I don't actually remember us voting to move this forward, so I'm just, did that happen?
So, on the result of the briefing that you receive on May 31st, I think the direction to bring those two pieces of AIS, that's the next step, is for the public hearing. That was the next step. You're not authorizing anything at this point until after you hold the public hearings.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I've always seen benefit to it as we've gone along, but I just was not recalling that.
How does this coincide with all the public information sessions you're having around the county, Tim?
Well, this is the legal part of the public process, the public hearings. As we briefed the board on last week, we've had a very robust, we feel, very robust engagement process that has included regular bill inserts, the development of a utility consolidation webpage on the county's website, messaging in our annual consumer confidence report. We're also setting up open houses in all of the individual communities for later this month. So prior to the public hearing in July, we will have held open houses in each of the communities as well. We've also had regular updates as a standing agenda item for the existing utility advisory committees. So we've updated them and received input from them throughout this process.
I was out May 31st, so that's why I'm not crazy.
You want to say that? I was checking your calendar.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that explains everything. Thank you.
Could I have one more question? Tim, as you hold these open houses, I guess later this month, at that point, will you have this preamble, I don't know if that's the right term or not, or history, ready to go to present it to those groups as to why we're doing what we're doing? Waiting until we just have the hearing, I think, is waiting too long. I think we ought to be giving the citizenry the history on this process before we get to the public hearing. I mean, have it there too, but especially when we're doing an open house in a particular area, for those people that are interested, and slip it in the water bill or, you know, as well. Try to flood the market so that we don't have too many people that are
No pun
saying,
intended.
yeah.
No, that's a great point. We'll make sure that the individual utilities background is available at all of these open houses.
And me and Director Walker, I had a town hall in Boston Harbor yesterday, and this was an item of discussion. And so I know that they're definitely ready for the open houses, and they're ready to provide public comment on this. So it was interesting to hear some of their perspectives on some of the items. And so, yeah, I know.
Did they have an understanding of the history?
Yeah,
and
they did.
why?
They've been very
Those that were
involved
attending?
in this whole process. They're very supportive. I think Tim knows this. I think one of the areas has been the process between whether the positions should be, so basically each utility would get like 2 representatives, except one of them would only get 1 representative, and they're appointed, but some of the comments from the Boston Harbor area were they would prefer for it to be elected over appointed, was just because appointed, they don't have any choice on who gets appointed, versus elected, they have a choice on choosing who the representatives are going to be in this
New council.
on this new council. So those were some of the comments that we received, and I know Director Walker wrote those comments down, and but
If I remember it right, the Boston Harbor, I'm sorry, the littler systems benefit because ground mound goes up a modest amount, and that really funds a subsidy of sorts to the littler systems that are not quite as sustainable. And so the littler systems really seem to benefit from the consolidation. Is that about how it shakes out, Tim?
Yeah, that's really correct. Initially, the smaller systems would receive tangible benefits through their rates going down over the 5-year period of rate blending considerably, while Grand Mound goes up, as you stated, marginally. And it's important to note that they would go up in an unconsolidated utility as well. One thing to add is it's important to note that all of the communities will benefit in the long run from these economies of scale. So while the smaller, older utilities will benefit more, I guess you could say initially, in the long term, Grand Mound is expected to benefit from a larger consumer base as well. So it's our expectation that in the long term, all the communities served will receive benefit from this action.
Madam Chair, could we, as a board, receive that history, if you will, that they're going to utilize, so we can also be aware of it? Because I don't think any of us know the history of these individual systems, and it would be beneficial to us to get that as well as the public.
We can certainly send a summary page of the background of each of the utilities to the county manager if you would like.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Okay. Perfect. So, and then our last department item is interlocal agreement with Thurston County Public Utility District Number 1.
Commissioners, this related to the Country Club Road. That is the fish barrier replacement project. And I believe the board is well aware of this particular project in the larger context. We need to get to the point of having this project be underway next year, 2024, as a result of the coordination that we have with the state on allowance this temporary replacement or fix of the culvert. So this particular item, as you know, the Thurston County Public Utility District owns and operates a 6-inch water main that goes across this area. And they are required to relocate at their own cost the 6-inch water line that serves the members of this community. So this particular agreement with the public utility district is for the county to do the improvements in it, remove the existing line, put a temporary line, and eventually when the bridge is constructed, to put a permanent line. And they will compensate for all the costs to the county. Because as you know, as any utility, we need the counties right away as a result of the franchise agreements that we have with them. When the county needs to upgrade their road facilities, each utility is responsible to relocate those costs, those lines or those utilities at their own cost. This really will allow us to do a more streamlined process in the construction process, to deal with the 6-inch line relocation. And as a result, they will be paying the county for those activities. Teresa is here to answer any questions.
Marcus Starbuck is our project manager. So, excuse me for standing. I've been sitting for so long.
Okay.
Anything you would like to add?
I don't have anything to add, but here to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Well, you're gonna hang a pipe under the bridge? Is that what you got in mind?
Well, we have to determine how that is going to be constructed. That's part of the design process that's currently underway.
It will be attached to the bridge, though. Marcus is working with our consultant to get that designed.
But it will be properly protected.
Yes, it will.
So just to make sure it's not just hanging.
And you've got it all figured out about the distribution, so the homes aren't gonna be left without water during the construction
Yeah,
project?
it's included in this contract. This agreement is providing a temporary water line. So services are not going to be disrupted.
I'm gonna defer to the kind of, okay, good, you're okay, I'm okay.
No, that's a question I was gonna ask, but thanks for that.
Exactly. The great concern is to make sure that people have provided water throughout the whole project.
Okay. Then we'll review our standing items, and then we have a Board of Health, but we also have a public hearing at 3:30. And that's Community Planning and Economic Development, public hearing on comments, open space tax program application.
Yeah, you will. For your consideration is two items on this particular open space application. One is to close the public hearing. And depending on the public testimony, for your consideration, second item to accept that application. This is going to be a very tight schedule the whole afternoon, commissioners, considering that we may receive public testimony from the unions in the afternoon. We have the public hearing followed by the Board of Health. So there's going to be a long afternoon next Tuesday, just to give a heads up.
Questions?
Yes, I guess following up on the county manager's comments. So I suppose we're gonna have to think at some point about length of time on the 4 minute, 3 minute, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But I do think having somehow giving this information that I requested earlier in today's meeting.
The CPI?
Yeah, that type, I don't know. I'm not saying that's gonna help, but so the public knows that we're not gonna be interacting and stuff, you know, they're gonna have an opportunity to present their issues. But I'm trying to not get it to take too long. I'm trying to figure out a way to make that happen. I'm not
Certainly
saying.
that's within the purview of the chair, absolutely, depending on the number of potential public testimony to reduce the time, so.
Questions?
On the public, no.
Okay. So then with that, I don't have any questions either. Thank you. With that, we will then go on to the Board of Health. And then next item is the review of the Board of Health draft agenda. It is 11:18. Let's go ahead and take a break before we pick up with that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back. Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session, and we're picking up with the Board of Health review of the agenda for Tuesday, June 13th, next Tuesday, calling that meeting to order at 4:30. Although as the county manager outlined, we are anticipating public comment, significant public comment, as well as a lot of agenda items, so we'll do the best we can to get that meeting started at 4:30. We will look at the approval of the agenda by the full board and then have opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health. Following up on that, we will do a proclamation for food safety. And that is June 4th through 10th as Food Safety and Composting Week in Thurston County. So it won't say composting in it. Okay, Food Safety Week. Director Bain, is there somebody who will be presenting information at that, in support of that proclamation from your staff?
Yeah, I believe it'll be Sammy Berg, who runs our food program.
Okay, questions, Commissioner? All right, that should be straightforward. And then first department item is temporary food establishment program update. And Art Starry is listed as our staff contact.
Good morning. So yeah, Sammy Berg and I will give you an update on the work that's being done to implement the program, the pop-up food vendor program. And so we've briefed you a few times on this. And actually, there's been some updates to the proposal that came about as a result of the meeting that we had with some of the vendors and with you as board, you, Commissioner Menser and Commissioner Mejia, I think it was in April. So there's some updates or some amendments to the proposal that I think will be favorably received that we want to be able to talk to you about. So that'll be just a quick update from Sammy primarily, and I'll also be there virtually and as well as David.
What is the staff suggesting like a next step? Do we need, if the Board of Health is comfortable, would we then like propose some, I can't remember, do we need to take some type of action?
You don't need to take any action. But if, as you hear the updated proposal, you decide that you want to take some kind of action, you could, of course, but you don't have to. We wanted to make sure the board saw kind of this final updated policy, given the feedback we've gotten.
Yeah, okay, very good.
Yeah, the way that we've been working on this was to create an option that didn't require any hearings or any official action by the board. This could be done administratively, given the way that our codes are written and the tools that we have within our administrative authority. But we obviously want to if the board has concerns or they concur with this, that'd be wonderful to know.
Okay. Then we'll go to item 5, which is Thurston County Medical Reserve Corps Annual Report.
Yeah, this is pretty routine. So the MRC, Medical Reserve Corps, I think has an annual report that they brief the Board of Health on, and it's time for that. So Sue Pointer is the main point of contact for that, and she'll be, excuse me, leading that report.
Questions, board member? Okay. All right, I don't have any questions either. That's usually a good presentation. Let's go to item 6, which is Washington chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics update.
Yeah, so this is a little bit different for us, and I'm excited to get some engagement from one of the new board members. So Dr. Harvey wants to just present an opportunity for partnership with the Washington chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics on boosting our immunization rates, particularly among children and young adults in Thurston County. So I'm looking forward to hearing that update, and I am sure it will spark sort of further conversation and ideas.
Anything there? Okay. Sounds good. And then health officer's report.
Yeah, I think we'll this will be one of the first I'd say kind of post-COVID reports Dr. A will give, or the focal point will be just on what she's seeing around the county and the department, sort of hot topics. We'll still, of course, give you updates on COVID trends, but that won't be the focal point anymore of the report.
Okay. Looking at the proclamation, which is attached to our packet, board members can look at that. There's a couple, I think there's some straight underlines there under right in the middle of the page, just as a typo. Yeah, okay. Yep, we'll get those to you. And so there won't be, so just to wrap this up, there won't be a July Board of Health meeting. And is there anything, I know there was a couple items that were kind of floating out there with regard to maybe health officer, and I think we've postponed our 988 update. So just anything there to tie this together for like what might be coming for August?
Yeah, I was just gonna highlight the 988 and having an update on the suicide prevention line. It'll be a really good update. A lot of work's been done over the last year on those efforts. And then, yeah, we've still been in kind of long ongoing negotiations with DOH on the kind of the LEGO MLU with them on the regional health officer piece. I'm not concerned about the timing. Dr. A's travel plans have changed timing wise, so we have opportunities to kind of work through this. And I want to get it right. This is something I want to be extended beyond just a one-time vacation for her, and just sort of how we operate with DOH generally.
Okay, and has there been any contact recently from the American Indian Health Commission?
Not since my last conversation with them, which was at the beginning of April.
What were you told at that time?
That the American Indian Health Commission would be reaching out to the 3 tribes once again, and that there was some interest from the Nisqually tribe in particular.
Thank you for bringing that up. I feel Commissioner Menser has done a great job at bringing this forward with our different tribal partners, the Chehalis tribe, Squaxin tribe. Chehalis and Squaxin hadn't heard anything about it, and I feel like when we spoke with Nisqually too, they hadn't heard anything about it. So really, it's been the board who's been getting the information out to them, and so it's been really surprising to me on how slow the process has been, and how we've been told that they're reaching out to the tribes, but whenever we've spoken to each of them, and the last one was recently with Squaxin tribe, and this was the first time that they heard about it. So
I kind of laid back for 6-9 months to give them opportunity. I don't know anything about the American Indian AIHC group.
Yep.
But I'm at the point where my patience kind of out, so I'm speaking about it to anytime I have contact with tribal leaders. I'm speaking, and I always get a good, positive, responsive interest. So I just like to really press this forward and get it resolved.
No, and I appreciate that. I know that our tribal partners appreciated that, and I'll continue to press with the AIHC. You guys know this. The process was set in statute about kind of who would do the arranging of this, and we're not the only county who's I think struggling to get these appointments completed. But I actually really appreciate the work that each of you have done to kind of work directly with the tribes, and hoping that maybe our kind of full court press here will kind of help move things along on this part. But it will not be from lack of effort on your part or on my part to get this moving.
Appreciate that. Anything else?
I think the challenge can be when you have more than one tribe and only one tribal seat, then they're going through a process of trying to narrow it down and build consensus as who that one person is to represent all of their interests.
But are they? If the tribes don't sound like they even know about this opportunity, then I have to question that. If they were in the middle of that process, I would be great, work it through. But I just want to make sure they're to that point, because that's going to be difficult enough as it is.
Correct.
So I think they should have engaged right out of the gate and gotten that going, but we'll see. Okay, Commissioner Edwards, anything?
No, sir.
Okay, that'll wrap up Board of Health for next week. Back to you, Madam Chair.
I've got one really quick. I think Art's got his hand up. I also wanted to note this will be Art Star's last Board of Health meeting as well, which is a tough thing for me to actually have to say out loud. Go ahead, Art.
And I was going to say that sometime probably in August, we'll be coming back to you to ask you to set a hearing date for the Nisqually O&M program renewal, because that's scheduled, as you know, it'll terminate at the end of the year if it's not reinstated. And so in order to reenact it, there'll need to be a public hearing. So we're in the midst of doing some public outreach, or at least starting public outreach, and we'll be working with our legal counsel to prepare an ordinance for consideration at a public hearing. And so we'll have to go through that process, of course, because there's prior notice and all that associated with setting hearings. So that'll be coming up, if not in August, then certainly in September, so we can get it all done and reach a conclusion before the end of the year.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
I do have one question. So Art, you're gonna stick around then until September?
That was kind of the royal we. I'll be happy to do whatever I can to make that work. I mean, that's really important to me. So anything I can do to help out. But June 30th is my last day, at least as far as I know it.
Yeah, well, we've got you on record saying you want to help out in September.
No, I do. This is really important stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art.
And that's all on the agenda for my end, Chair.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll go back to the Board of County Commissioners agenda. Thank you. And just looking at the time and looking at all the items we have to review,
I can probably move the park impact fee report to next week.
okay. So that's been moved to next week. Really quickly, nothing for the PIO proclamations and awards. Okay, so any pressing questions commissioners have on those?
Proclamation awards.
Yeah, advisory boards and commissions or PIO check-in.
I'd like the board to address the correspondence from the Agriculture Advisory Committee Chair, but it doesn't have to be today.
Okay.
A good commissioners check-in conversation.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So then, with that legislative update, we have a briefing coming up, correct? With Deborah Munguia. Any questions?
And that is tomorrow in the afternoon. You'll have an hour to talk to Deborah Munguia, and hopefully that will be the looking back into how the legislative session went, and also start thinking about what will be the legislative items that you would like to include on the next year's agenda.
Okay, and then, go ahead.
Did the hospitals get in on any of that discussion with Deborah?
We're connected. I connected Deborah with their lobbyist, and
Thank you.
and any type of piece of legislation they would like the county to support will have the connection made.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
And then on Thursday for Commissioner check-in, is there a possibility that we can start a little bit later? If you can start around like 10:15?
Certainly, yeah.
Is that okay with commissioners?
Yeah.
Will that work with everyone's schedule? I have a doctor's appointment beforehand, so.
We'll change that to 10:15.
Okay, thank you. Okay, commissioners item, we have 3 items. Let's go ahead and start with the Axon video resource. This is a follow-up.
Thank you. And John, Patrick, thank you for your patience. Sorry that we're running a little late this morning, so I know you have been waiting on. So this is a follow-up to the conversation we received a couple of weeks ago. And where John, County Prosecutor John Tunheim and Director of Public Defense, Patrick Connor, provided you with the common issue related to managing the data related to the body cams they're using in law enforcement across the county and all the jurisdictions pretty much. And really is how we're gonna be able to, for them to conduct their business and how that's gonna have an impact in managing the images related to the body cams. And it's a lot of information that needs to be researched, stored. It creates a point of how we're gonna be able to manage that. They provided a perspective on the Action Enterprise, and this Action Enterprise is perhaps an avenue as to they can get access to all the video footages in order for you to conduct your business as required by law. And within that context, they provide with an impact to the county in terms of the budget. And it's a potential 6-year venture beginning this year for a half year, which have an impact of $98,066. In the ongoing, beginning January 2024 through 2028, it's just about $176,519 per year. The overall contract, they're suggesting is $980,661.28. During that conversation, as you may recall, that perhaps the first year here in 2023, the $98,606 of this contract can be absorbed by the salary savings or any savings that each of those two departments, the public defense as well as the Office of the Prosecutor's Office can absorb this year. But really the question became as to how the ongoing impact will be on the following years. And you requested that before you may consider taking the next steps as to see how this has an impact on the forecast that they would have provided to you. Robin Campbell was ready this morning to have an interactive approach to this. Unfortunately, she had some personal matters to attend on an emergency basis, but Nicole Martinez is here, the fiscal manager and budget manager, to give you a perspective. I think is not going to be able to do an interactive, but at least give you a snapshot as to what this potential contract will be. The intent of this conversation, at least from my point of view, is I'm not in the position to argue against the need. I believe that John and Patrick has made a very compelling argument as to what they need to do in order to conduct their business. The obligation that I have to the board is making sure whatever you make the financial decisions, you're committing to something. And in this case, if it's a 5-year contract that you're considering, you're committing for the rest of the budget years, which becomes a baseline impact to your budget. And that has some consequences, some of the decisions you may have to do this fall during the biennial budget. That is the premise of this conversation.
Thank you. I thought we were going to wait until we had the mayor's meeting where we were going to bring this item up to discuss whether the cities wanted to contribute to this program.
That was an alternative that I believe also you request the staff to give you a perspective as to what will be the impact if the county was to take that all in. I think the conversation with the cities will continue on. I don't think it's going to be materialized in something tangible, to be honest with you. That is something ongoing, and I don't think it's going to be, from what I can see, a timely matter to address this need the prosecutors and the public defense has. And again, yeah, but that is something, if you'd like to delay this conversation until that conversation with the cities is, certainly that is within your purview.
I don't know if we're gonna delay. I've got nothing against whatever we need to do. I think we need to do something. But I'm always curious how other jurisdictions are handling this same issue and how they've moved forward. And did they use a similar product or the same product or maybe a competitor's product? How did it all work out for others that have been doing this? And I think, hasn't Pierce County had a system in place now longer than we have? But maybe other jurisdictions, I'm just taking a guess. So are there others? Boy, I hate to reinvent the wheel. And, I mean, this is gonna be like $750,000 or more over the next 5 years.
980,661.
Okay, yeah, okay, it was gonna be a bunch. And it's a big hit, so is there any mechanism in place that we can do it for less than that? Or do we have to pay more than that to get it done right? I don't know, I hate to do it on a shoestring now and kind of get it haphazard and well, sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. You know, I wanna do it right, but I also wanna spend the taxpayers' money in the most efficient manner we possibly can, to include, I don't know, maybe postpone the whole program if that's what we need to do. I don't know that that's what we need to do, but we got along a long time without having a program like this. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just looking for a solution.
Well, I could say that the principles you expressed are the same things that we're looking at, is what's the best way to do this, most efficient way to do this at best cost. I can't speak directly to Pierce County's program. There are other counties that have essentially used the same product. In fact, Doug was talking to me earlier about other public defenders' offices that he's been in contact with that are using Axon. And we are trying to find, the best solution that we can in terms of how we manage all of this. So that I don't forget, the whole issue is in terms of whether we discontinue the body cam program, you really only can do that for the county, right? But we still have all the cities that we're dealing with, and I don't see any authority for us to say, cities, you gotta stop doing your body cam program. And then I don't have the option to say, I'm not gonna take your evidence, right? Because the evidence is the evidence. And so we are in a little bit of a rock and a hard place in terms of that when all the cities also move to body cam programs. What I can say though is that the other solutions that we've talked about in terms of trying to use our case management system, eProsecutor, to manage this, or to use Laserfish, or to use other raw, kind of just raw storage. I think the costs actually for that would exceed what we're dealing with here. One of the big benefits of working with this product is that we get unlimited storage that's built into the fee. So the fee doesn't escalate as we use more storage. It's a flat fee, and that's unlimited storage. Whereas eProsecutor, if we start dumping it into there, we start paying per terabyte every time that bumps up in terms of our cloud storage. And I just don't think that IT wants to try to manage all of this storage locally with local storage devices, because it'll just accumulate over time. And most of these videos will have to be kept for years as part of our, our record system. So when we've talked about all of these issues, I mean, you're hitting exactly the same points, Commissioner, that Patrick and I have been talking about, and that we've been talking about with our staff. This is really our best solution because it works with the companies who are producing the body cam videos. It allows us to do all this storage and manipulation of the videos while it's in the cloud, so we don't have to download into any other local storage. Now we went back and the original proposal, they agreed we could go to 5, and it was going to originally be a 5-year contract. They said, well, we can go to 5.5, prorate you out 2023 so that you only pay the 6 months that you're actually using it in 2023. and that's the first number. It's about 98,000. And I think Patrick and I are prepared to absorb that in our existing budget based on personnel savings that we've had from turnover. And then going out the next 5 years, the other thing about the contract proposal that they've made, and this is pursuant to the state contract, it's flat fee again for all 5 years. So there's no escalation. It doesn't get more expensive over time, at least for the first 5 years. So we're locking them into that price for 5 years. And I actually think that when you look at our ongoing budgets, going into the next 5 years, because of the personnel savings that we're experiencing this year, you know, that carries forward, right? So it'll be that personnel savings ends up carrying forward and getting built into the 24-25 budget and so on and so forth. And so the reality is, I think from a very practical standpoint, what we're doing is taking some of that salary savings ongoing and investing it into this tool for our staff.
To understand you correctly, prosecutor, what your suggestion is absorbing it this year between you and public defense's budget, and then after that, it would be a request?
It would be built into our budget proposal for the next biennium. And I think there's still a conversation to be had about, is it going to the IT budget? Does it go into our budget? That to me, that's the conversation that comes at budget time. But either way, I don't think it's a go, no go for, I don't think it's a deal breaker for this conversation.
A point of clarification, if I may. I believe the proposal is for the board to authorize a 5.5-year contract. So by doing so, the board is committing. So budget conversations may not be practical in the next year or 2 years, because by the contractual obligations, the board is committing to this contract for the next 5.5 years. So I just want to clarify that is the intent, as I understand, because you're requesting for the board to consider a 5.5-year contract.
Right, we're gonna, yeah, we would acquire the product for 5 years.
Yeah, so,
or the licenses, I should say, for 5
really,
years.
and that's what, for me, is important for the board to understand is that if the board agrees with this 5.5-year contract, you're committing to that expenditure for the next 5.5 years, and that puts a burden on the conversations that you have during the biennial budget.
Yeah, maybe, you know, to that point, because the truth of the matter is there's no going back at this point. Commissioners, I think to your question in terms of pauses, at least, you know, that's one conversation with the county, but it's different for the municipalities. But I truly don't see another way forward for law enforcement taking a step back and reversing course. Frankly, that's why a 60-month contract is even being contemplated, because this is law enforcement criminal investigations now and in the future. And frankly, I only see it getting wider in terms of digital evidence, things that we're not even anticipating. So this is dealing with our own crisis and management of the data year to date, but it's also being very prospective on behalf of law and justice for our offices, is managing data in the future, as this just continues to be, you know, an ongoing reality.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
So this quote says that there's a discount being offered. Where's that coming from? You guys didn't mention that.
So that's what they're willing to prorate this year, right? They're willing to work with us this year if the board approves. You know, as Romero pointed out, this is a commitment for 5.5 years from the county, but they're willing to work with us on prorating. I don't know specifically where you're referencing, Commissioner, but
Front page, it says, quote summary, 66 months, $917,000. And then right next to that, it says discount summary, average savings per year, $136,000, total savings, $750. So I'm just trying to understand that.
I know I have Jose Vargas, my fiscal manager, is on the call. He may be able to answer that.
Because in the payment summary, it sounds like we're paying, forget about the prorated, just let's look at the 5 years. We're paying $165,000 a year. So how are we saving 136? I'm just not understanding where the discount is.
Well, the discount was already applied on the quote provided by Axon. So their regular price, based on the NASCO contract, if this was going to be offered without discount, it would be an additional $136,000 per year, based on the NASCO contract.
So it would be
In total,
300,000 a year?
yes.
Okay, now I understand. I was thinking it was 165 and they were discounting it to 136, but that's the savings, not the new price.
That's the savings, sir.
My experience is, and this was true with e-prosecutor and before that with Damien, is they have the suggested retail price or whatever it is, and then they discount from that, and then that's part of the package, as they call it, a discount. My typical focus is just always on the bottom line. What does it actually cost?
Yeah, and just a reminder on, on NASPO contracts, right, there's a clause that funding is always subject to county funding and availability for funding in the future. So there is a clause in that contract that should something in the future cause the county not be able to fund this product, there's options.
There is a way out, is what you're saying.
Under the NASPO contracts, yes.
So if I could draw our attention to the current sheet,
Can
this sheet.
can I ask my questions and then we'll jump onto that? So my questions are, so what happens to the data, right? All that stored cloud data, if in the future we decide to go, if Axon's not the biggest fish in the company, in the, in the sea, like what happens to all that cloud data and all the transferring of that data? Are they beholden to it and then you have to pay for, to access that data even further in the future? Like what happens to all of it? Because we're obviously using their cloud server for this, and you have to pay to access that. So if we decide to go with a different company in the future, what's going to happen to that?
If, well, the data is our data, right? And so if we switch products, there would, I guess if it would be the same as any other software. When you change software products, there's a transfer that becomes part of that change, right? And that's what I would expect would happen. We're certainly willing to go back to Axon and make sure we're clear on exactly what that means. But at some point, the data would get extracted from their cloud and go into whatever we would use to store it.
I would like to know this, right? Because I don't want in 2028 or 2029, we decide to switch companies because there's a better company that's offering a better, bigger service out there. And all of a sudden, we can't access that data anymore. Even though the data belongs to us, it's still loaded onto their servers and it's going to be, this whole situation that, we either have to pay to access it or it's just going to be, because I've also seen that. I've, seen that multiple times when you're transferring data from one system to another, you have to pay quite a bit of money to keep those two services up. And so that's at a big cost to taxpayers usually. So I would like to know that information. My next question, and this I guess is for the county manager, is in relation to the process. Last time the prosecutor and public defense came over here, they said that they had presented this to the ITC and that this was going to be something, right, that they were going to need. And I'm wondering that dribble of information, why the board never sort of like, just a heads up, this is a possibility, just so you're aware this might be a budgetary impact going into the future. I mean, we heard about it until after we had gone through the budget amendment process. And, first time we heard about it was when the prosecutor and public defense sat over here in front of us through an agenda item. And so I'm wondering that distribution of information, I mean, where was the breakdown?
I don't think it was the breakdown. I think you heard from the prosecutor last time in terms of the timing, because that was the first question, is why we didn't include this in the budget amendment. And I think it's just something that just surfaced as a need from the public defense and the prosecutor. So we brought this matter before you as soon as we learned. And as soon as I got information, there's a sense of urgency, I put that on your agenda. So, and I believe John stated last time he talked to the board as to what the timing, as to why this item was not included in the budget amendment.
Part of the issue was that all the departments went live at a fairly close timeline. So county went live, and then almost immediately Olympia went live, and then Lacey shortly thereafter. And so everybody, it's all happening at the same time. And we really had no understanding of exactly how much data this would involve.
But if I remember correctly, you went to the ITC committee back in March.
Right, yeah, so as soon as we realized the crisis of data, we requested the process on, turn to Nicole, just by habit, not because she was involved in that, but to ask, what's our recourse? What's our process? Do we need to go to the ITC? And we were directed to go to the ITC because the question loomed on whether or not we needed to go out for RFP. For RFP that was the question, because there was some uncertainty whether or not we would need to do that, but that's been clarified, and I think Robin spoke to that the last time we met. The answer to that is no. The first ITC subcommittee we could get on the agenda on to even address that issue was, I think, at the end of March. If I'm sort of somewhere either in March or April, excuse me, strike that. I think it was at the end of April. April 27th. It's the first time we could get in front of the ITC, but then ongoing conversations. And we submitted all our documents to the ITC subcommittee, but it was sort of singular in nature. Do we need to go to RFP for this solution? And that was determined that no, we do not need to go to RFP for this solution. So it sort of struck it from the ITC agenda because, again, it was singular in nature. And then we got in front of the board as soon as we could after that in terms of timing. But, circling back, as I stated last time, I called for meetings last year with the sheriff's office. Had no idea about the city of Olympia or Lacey. Had no idea they even acquired body cams, when their live date was going to be. It's not as though they reach out to me and have those communications. And I think this caught John by surprise as well. First meeting I was even able to convene was in February with the prosecuting attorney's office and their staff, only to be told by the cities that yes, we're going live. I think Lacey was a matter of weeks, and Olympia said next week, and the sheriff said in 2 weeks or something like that. So, just for context, that's where we're at. That's where we've been, and this is where we're at right now.
Is there any reason that, so the cities, okay, they dumped this on you, didn't tell you about it. But, so you have to accept it, theoretically, but why wouldn't that be the same as you telling them, okay, if you're gonna use this process, you need to supply the end product so we can utilize the information that you're submitting to us, or evidentiary information, or whatever it is. So I don't see this as solely a county problem. I see it as a problem, but, and also I'm not sure we can't go back, because there's a lot of jurisdictions around the country that are not doing this. And the municipalities could do it, but they also need to provide the mailbox, if you will, to receive the information that they're giving you so you can utilize that information. I'm not sure it's up to us to run 2 or 3 different types of activity, and what does happen if the cloud goes down? Who's responsible for that? You've got a court case coming up, you're trying to download it for a jury or whatever it is. Oops, it's not here. Oh, we're not gonna be up until next week. Well, what's the problem? Do we hold them in contempt of court? The same, or is your option dismiss the case? Whatever, there's some unpleasant options all the way through this whole thing. And I'm just not sure from what I'm hearing that we're kind of being led to the trough, so to speak, and you're gonna use so much of this water, whether you like it or not. It's so much a gallon or an ounce or whatever it is. I don't think that gives us a very good option. The municipalities have always had the revenue source to do a lot of different things than what the county could do. That's been the history of the county doing business. So when I ask about what are other jurisdictions doing, okay, so we got 39 counties. There's 39 prosecutors. Are they all in the same business? They have to provide public defense to those indigent folks, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not sold that we've got an answer in front of us that we can't just say, well, until the state makes it a mandate, we're not doing this. And then once they make it a mandate, then we could sue for revenue to cover that as an unfunded mandate. And I think the rest of the counties would probably join us in that. So I hate to say, well, how many other counties are doing it? Well, you don't know. How many, they're using what? Well, we don't know. And I just can't go with the I don't know business. I mean, it's kind of like we're up against something similar with the coroner. We're going from 10 overdose deaths, in a year, maybe a year or two ago, to 150. And that's a direct cost to us. The state kicks in a little bit on that one, but even so, I mean, there's certain things that are coming down the pike that we just don't have the resources to deal with. And I'm struggling. No, when I was sheriff many years ago, I had to tell all the different companies, we're not responding to burglar alarms anymore. Too many false alarms, too much danger to the public with driving patrol cars at high speed. We're not doing it. Boy, it didn't go over very good, but they figured out a way around it. And I think there is a way around this to kind of diversify the cost, if you will, amongst others. I don't know what that answer is yet, but for us just to lock in on a 5-year process right now makes me nervous without knowing some of those other facts. Do we have to? Maybe the Attorney General would say, no, you can't quit. You got to go forward with this. Well, then it's an unfunded mandate, possibly. I don't know the answer to a lot of this, but it's being kind of thrown in our lap without, and your lap as well, without a real solution. So I don't know.
How are the cities providing, if we didn't have this system, how would, like Olympia has got a felony investigation, what would you get from them? Like they do have, like, I'm trying to follow up on Commissioner Edwards' point, like they do have to provide you the evidence. So what would they do? Flash drive or email it?
A link,
and
and we
you'd
would have to download it.
And
And
so
so
you have to
that's,
store it locally.
that's the issue. Yeah, we either store it locally, well, there's the time to download. And then we have to either store it locally, in Laserfish or on eProsecutor. And at the end of the day, that's gonna cost you way more than what we're paying, what we would pay for this product.
Are they paying something for their ability to put that link up for your benefit?
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
think
is there-
so.
How, are they already paying? I guess what I'm getting at is, look at the overall system. Are they already kind of chipping in a sense because they have to provide a means to get this to you? And then this is our receiving part of the system cost?
That's the way I see it. So they obviously have a contract with their provider, right? That gives them certain things. So for, the county doesn't use Axon, the county is using GTAC. That's part of the other complication is that we've got 2 different systems in place. Now, but let's take Olympia, for example. They have a contract with Axon. And so that, I assume that contract covers, the cameras and everything, and the upload and the cloud space for that video to exist. And then what they would do is they'd send us the link, we'd have to pull it down and store it and manipulate it locally. And then once we did that, we'd give it to defense, and then they'd also have to store it locally, right? And they have to be separate copies, I think. So we're actually be doubling up in terms of local storage. So that's how that, and that's actually how, right now, we're only able to do the way we're doing it is because they've given us this temporary license for defense to be able to get their side of this also from the link, right? We pass it along through that. When we license this, that becomes the kind of the standard of operation. Plus, we can upload any other digital evidence that we have into that same, into the cloud for Axon. So we can upload, we can put GTAC video in there. We can do surveillance video, cell phone data, all digital data can go into that storage system and be managed there in that cloud. And then we can do the discovery process over to defense. The data all stays in the cloud and we do the manipulation while it's in the cloud.
I'm trying to feel through kind of what leverage we would have, if any, to ask the cities to make a contribution. I mean, I'm not hearing a very strong case, really.
I haven't been able to think of any way to tactically kind of force the cities to do it. I mean, really, this would be, I think, a conversation between the jurisdictions in terms of, realizing a need to cost share the impact of this. But at the end of the day, if they elect to stay with body cams and they are in fact recording criminal investigations and that is evidence and they provide it to us, I don't have a choice but to deal with it.
I got to follow up on this because there's one benefit of being old, and that is that you've been there for a long time and seen things change. And I'm going to refer to rape kits. In the olden days, when I started in law enforcement, they didn't even have things like that. Then eventually, we came up with that technology with rape kits. Before long, the crime lab was overloaded and was not able to keep up on those. And so they were submitted the information, and I'm sure they did what they could. But we in law enforcement, in conjunction with the prosecution, had to move forward on those cases without that. It was sent in, okay, don't go back. What's the rest of your evidence to put your case together? I see this as happening very much the same way, that now we're being given a new tool that we can't afford. They might come out with a new gun that costs $100,000 here pretty quick, and it just immobilizes you for 2 minutes or whatever it is. I don't know. We're not going to be able to have the money to buy that. We don't have the money to do what's being asked. So when Olympia says they've got additional information, you say, okay, well, if you can present it in a usable format. I mean, I can remember as a detective, we couldn't have one misspelled word when we submitted stuff to the prosecutor's office because it made us look stupid on the stand, first of all. But second, we had to have everything right. It was up to us to make that presentation and that information right. I see this as the same way. If the city has a case that they're moving forward with, they submit you usable evidence. You don't have the material. You might have to say, no, well, we're not using that. We got a gunshot wound or whatever. We don't have a camera showing that he shot it, but you got the gun in his hand, the test on his hand, the bullet, eyewitness, and you move forward as you've got it. Not with what you'd like to have, but you make do. And I think we're almost in a situation here where we're going to have to make do, because I see a never-ending drain on the public dollar for a limited benefit. I mean, it's just like all these cameras that we've put up around to help with crime prevention. I don't think we've ever used one that we caught somebody vandalizing a vehicle or stealing a converter or whatever. It's kind of nice to have. We know what happened at 2 a.m, but we don't get enough information to really utilize it. It'd be nice if it did, but it doesn't. Same way with rape kits. I mean, pretty soon we're prioritizing. Well, the worst of the worst. Come on, can you get that one done and get us back? Because that's the hinge piece for our evidentiary move. Well, I don't know. I see something similar here, and we're going to be stuck if we don't put our foot down and say, well, We can only do X, you can only do what we give you money to do. You can go out in the community and say, well, them darn commissioners won't give us money to do X, Y, or Z. So, I don't know where we're at, but I'm just not sold on this whole thing yet because I don't see an end in sight. But some of these other questions I've got, what other agencies are doing around the state, what are they doing?
I can answer, well, Commissioner, I can answer your question. The NASPO master agreement states that the agency, in this case Thurston County, would control all rights, titles, and interests to agency content. So that's in the agreement, the NASPO agreement should be contract. So we own the rights to the content. So if that clears up your question in terms of exposure for the county and content in the future. I have reached out across the state to my colleagues, and I think, these would be mirrored for John's colleagues, but I think he hasn't yet to, talk to some of his colleagues. But there are at least 4 major counties in the state of Washington that use this product because their jurisdictions made that decision, whether it's the municipalities or the county, to go to body cams for their own reasons, right? Same reasons that our law enforcement has adopted the policy, which I think we all objectively support, at least I do, for transparency and all the reasons you heard from the sheriff's office, and I'm sure it was the same reasons with the municipalities. In terms of, I don't know the conversations that took place in those other jurisdictions, whether or not they brought the public defender and the prosecutor to those budget requests to fund and said, what's the downstream cost to the prosecutor and the public defenders if we do this? Okay, and the prosecutor and public defender saying, well, we need to figure out how we store this data. I don't know if those conversations took place, but I can tell you from in the state of Washington, I was speaking with Rob earlier about Kitsap County, they're still considering adopting it, but they haven't adopted body cams. But for those 3 or 4 major jurisdictions that I've talked to, they do have the Axon product and evidence.com to manage the data.
I mean, I think our position, if this were just something we're sitting here going about our business and Olympia and Lacey went ahead and did this and now it's causing a problem for us, your argument would be a little stronger, I think, but we invested in our sheriff's office. And I sat down with Sheriff Snaza in advance of the budget, and I said, I want to know your top budget priorities in descending order. And his #1 budget priority was body cams. So I made sure that that was a priority for my budgetary positions. And then we had the grant that paid for the equipment from the state. And so we've invested in this. And so I think that complicates any kind of argument that we're getting something foisted upon us that we couldn't see coming or that, we're blindsided by. So I don't know. I mean,
And Patrick's right. This is modern policing. We're not going backwards, right? Body cams are only expanding. I just don't see us going backwards on this. And from a public policy standpoint, in terms of what do the citizens want? This is what they want. They've been demanding for quite a while.
I mean, I don't just, my card's on the table. I don't see an option here. I mean, but just as a fair warning, I mean, this is going to affect, when we sit down, what is it, in a few days to talk about our budget wants, our wish list. My wish list is going to be empty because of things like this. We made commitments and we get hammered with costs after the fact, and it continues to eviscerate. Nicole hasn't had a chance to go over this graph, but I'm not comfortable with this, but I can't not fund the justice system, what I see to be a critical component of your guys' need to do your work. So I'm gonna want to support this, but it's gonna have a ripple effect. And warning to you guys, when you come in to ask me for more positions or more pay or whatever it is, it's not gonna be there because of things like this. And we don't as a board build capacity for these kind of hits. The economic hits come a lot more frequently than the economic windfalls. That's what I've seen in at least the last 5 years of my experience on the board. So, we push and push and push, and we get here and we're like, oh, it's almost good enough. Let's just go with it so we can meet the needs of our departments. And then we get hit after hit after hit, whether it's risk pool, going through the stratosphere, or autopsies or L&I, and now something like this, software and positions that are needed for the software for the systems that we've already committed, whether it's Amanda, ERP, and all of that. So it just puts us in a position where it's tough, and I'm always gonna follow through to support the commitments we've already made for policies that we think are valid, but I'm not gonna have much appetite for new spending in light of the kind of hits. And I'm not just putting this on you. This is one of a series of pieces that this board's been hit with since we adopted our biennial budget. But I'm just laying this out as a preview for the public, my seatmates, and elected officials that are gonna come forward with budget requests. I don't see we're gonna have much capacity to do much, but this is important.
And fair enough, those comments are fair enough. But again, I'm gonna come back and say that I think both public defenders and I are experiencing impact to our budget that's in the positive because of the turnover that we've had, right? We have people working for us now that cost less than the people that we lost. In some ways, what we're asking you to do here is take that and reinvest it in this tool, because the alternative is I come back and I ask for more positions to do all the management locally, and we end up paying for the storage locally. And so you're right. I mean, it's a rock and a hard place, but this is the cost of doing business from our standpoint.
Let me get the county manager and then.
Okay. You know, I appreciate that, and I have a question. And what will be the consequences to delay this conversation during the biennial budget? And because I think that at that point, the board will have all the information, all the requests in front of them, so they can make an informed decision related to the impacts on the overall budget. I mean, you have gone through this for, I don't know, for the last few months. What is the consequences to wait until the board has a broad perspective of all the requests so they can make an informed decision on the impacts of the budget? That's a question that because there's a lot of questions in here, and I know Commissioner Messer is supportive, but there's a lot of questions that are going to take time to get to these answers. And since this is a budgetary commitment, they may take us not just this year. You said it's already savings this year, check, but the future years, perhaps the most prudent approach will be to wait until the fall to have a larger conversation on this investment.
The first deadline, Patrick can help me with this, but the deadline that's out there looming is in August, I think, when the public defense loses its Axon license, its temporary license. And at that point, we have to start downloading. I don't see any other way around it. But we're already several weeks behind in our discovery process, and so the impact for this is that continues to grow, cases delayed, or we can't file. And I don't think that's what, well, given what's going on in our community around crime right now, I don't think the public wants to hear that the whole system's slowing down because of this.
So, I'm sorry, Commissioner, go ahead, please.
No, just one thing on storage. Why is it that you have to absorb the storage cost? Why couldn't the agency, as part of their filing the information with you, be responsible for the storage and pay for it?
I think the question is, what authority would I have to make them pay?
We'll just review the case and say, well, I guess we don't have a video of this case. What other information are you presenting to me to prosecute this individual?
If the video exists, I can't not.
Subpoena the video from the city.
In which case I still have to store it. You see what I'm getting at?
I know.
And then he has to turn it over. So, I mean, that's why that starts kicking in prosecutor independent discovery obligations under the court rule. Prosecutors are obligated to.
Well, I think you're gonna get your money eventually, but I think
so
we're all
that's-
fired up about it.
And I think that's sort of
So,
Ramirez, to your question, I mean, just, the longer term commitment is obviously what's being contemplated right now. But what's being offered from our offices is to cover this year's expenses in terms of delaying, this decision to the fall, where you have a bigger picture, and obviously you'll have every office and department budget requesting, but the need, I think, we don't need to revisit the need. It's the decision point. And if the decision point is now, and what we're forecasting with our salary savings would cover this investment through this year, and then making that decision for the 5-year contract in the biennium budget, is sort of a separate issue. I mean, it's the same.
It's not
question.
though. It's not a separate issue
Yeah,
because,
you don't have any choice.
well, you're absorbing it this year. You will have to readjust the budgets for next year. So
Yeah.
that, if we're committing to it now, we're committing to it for that whole time period. So it's not just a
Yeah.
this year impact. We're looking at it throughout all the years, and
And that is the hinge.
That's the question.
hinge, because they, as you stated, if the board approves this 5.5-year contract, they will not have the option to backtrack during the biannual budget conversations. Because that will be undo a already signed contract.
Right.
So there's really is not an option, to be in practical terms. So if there's an option to delay this, apparently you make an argument that it isn't, then I would like to ask the board, where do you want to take this next?
Well, like Patrick did say though, that we could get out of it, I guess, if we don't have any money. Well, what does that mean? We have to be broke? We don't have any money in our rainy day fund? Or what does it take to get out of that agreement, I guess, if we need to do it at some point? We don't have the money.
I mean, the clause is conditional on county available funding in the future.
Well, yeah, but we could fund everything elsewhere and you don't have any money.
But it's still, I mean, and then it will go back to square one.
Right, we'll be having the same conversation.
And you read a little piece of that contract language. But based on what I've heard, it really doesn't address Commissioner Mejia's question, because it's the ownership of the data is one thing, it's the access. And I think that's what we're paying with this software, is the access to the data. And if we decided to go with somebody else, we own the data, as you stated clearly. But are we committed to pay for the access to our data?
It's really not the access, just to be clarified. I mean, it's really about the software allows us to process and manage the data while it's still in the cloud. Because we could go in there now, as I'm saying, and just download it all onto local servers, right? What I'm saying is the cost of that is probably at least this or more to do that and to manage it locally than to manage it in the cloud. So the data is ours. We can take it anytime we want. It's just, where are you gonna put it, and is that gonna cost you the same amount as what you're paying to do it up there? Yeah.
Well, and maybe that brings perhaps another option, is to work with IT to see what will be the two options. You have a very good option in here. You said, in what if we ended up storing and requiring for us to build additional capacity to store the data? What was that, the dollars and cents the IT provides?
So what we can do is, I can ask for projection. We've got an estimate now that we're getting about 1 terabyte a week, okay? So what we can do is ask IT to give us an estimate as to what it would cost to store that indefinitely, right? Because I've got at least.
how about on our very own cloud storage? I
They
mean,
were very clear, this is way too much data for the county to store. In our
or
case, yeah.
even on a cloud storage, I mean,
But it's just, is buying access to the cloud. I mean, I don't think, but I think that may be something that we can take the next steps as to see.
How much data do you need on it? So you're given that, okay, you've got a 5-minute section of information that's pertinent to your case. Do they give you the 24-hour tape, and you can't just take that little piece out, or and you have to have a whole hour tape? Is there some requirement there? And what I'm getting at is, could you take and just say, okay, give me a thumb drive of the 5 minutes that are pertinent to this case. That's all I want. So you take the thumb drive and you put it in the file. You don't download it or anything. You just put it in the file on the thumb drive. It's a piece of evidence. Maybe you make a copy for Patrick. I don't know exactly how it works, but God, there's got to be some other deal so they don't have us over a barrel here.
Yeah, there's too much data for that to be a solution. I mean, we've actually been using thumb drives for certain digital data now for a while and doing exactly that. There's no way to do this in that way. And if law enforcement has a full video of an incident, I can't pick and choose what I want because defense is entitled to the entire video, right? Otherwise, I'm holding back or discarding evidence. And I'm not gonna be put in that position as well, so. This is a no-win scenario. I'm willing to, we can sit down and kind of work up if there's any other pathway and what the cost is. But I don't have a good solution. I don't have another solution right now. And the longer we wait, it's landing right on the back of my staff.
We've got a meeting coming up with DECA from a legislative perspective, maybe about what's going on. And don't you guys have the chiefs meeting coming up, or, I mean, the mayor's meeting?
Yeah.
Coming up pretty quick, and then maybe we'll have a better understanding and maybe talk about it at that point. I mean, I don't think we have to wait. I don't want to wait too long. I'd
For
like to
me,
make a
it's like,
decision.
I'm not there. I'll be very frank. I'm not there. I feel like we're getting, and I'm not debating the need of your offices, but I'm debating the financial impact that we're going to be having. And I want to see other options. I want to see, what is out there. And I don't think that, we've seen that. And I'm just, for me, just seeing that financial impact, I want to see, I want to see what other options there are. And I want to weigh them out and, because, this is, again, this came really quickly across and
Maybe we can bring this item in a couple of weeks. Look at what the options, the IT, financial impact, what if we were to store? And then whether the conversation with the mayors next Friday materialize into something related to this item. Will that work? And maybe come back on and have additional conversation with the board in 2 weeks or so? That work?
That's the next step forward. That's it. What was the cost of the body cam program to the sheriff's office? Does anybody
100,000,
know?
I think, wasn't it?
No, it was over $1 million.
Over $1
million, and we
And it
got,
was
I think it was 1.4 million, and we got
1.4 million.
1.1
It was a
million
grant.
paid by
we got a grant of 1.1,
filled in the rest with
but it was
local
1.5 there, but it's way over $1 million.
Does this, Axon, is it only for the prosecuting attorney and public defense? Or is there a way that this subscription could actually help shift some of the costs for just regular public disclosure requests for?
Thanks for asking that. We would be using this for public records because anytime somebody asks for a public record, well, the sheriff already uses it because they have their own access to it, and the cities would do it from their system, right? But if I get a public records request, I would be pulling it out of this system to provide it. And then, of course, the other issue is on the civil side of the house, right? So if there's a use of force allegation, if there's a civil suit brought in on a collision or something, and there's relevant video, that also gets, we have the ability to use it for that as well. So this is evidence of all kinds and brands and is used for public records as well.
Okay, it is 12:46 and we have the coroner who's been
Waiting on the
waiting
sidelines.
for a long time. Thank you.
With a similar problem, I might
With,
add.
yeah. And this is a conversation, and it came from our budget amendment discussions. And it was Thurston County Coroner's Office, and it was in regards to autopsies.
Are you planning to share your screen, Gary?
Yes. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for the invite and Romero for facilitating this. It was brought to my attention that there were some questions about the number of autopsies and the amount that they cost for today's cost. We got a surprise jump on January 1 with no notice about our cost of autopsies, and that's where we're at today. And I will be honest with you, the opioid epidemic, pandemic, that is really driving our budget. Right now, we're averaging about 15 overdoses a month. So yeah, that's where we're at.
I have a quick clarification. Gary, you say opioid, but don't you mean fentanyl is the issue?
Fentanyl, yeah, fentanyl.
I tell you what, I think we need to talk about this more in the fentanyl reality that we're dealing with. Because opioids are a different category, and we've, ended up with litigation with the pharmaceuticals and all that. There's nobody here to litigate with on fentanyl. We've got a border problem, and we've got a drug problem in this country that enhances that border problem, because where there's a desire, there's gonna be somebody comes up with a product. So I really do think we need to stick with fentanyl, let people know that this is a major problem.
Well, the fentanyl is the #1 cause of death in drug overdoses, and close behind that is going to be methamphetamine.
Is it spiked with fentanyl by any chance?
Everything is pretty much everything is spiked with.
Go ahead, if you can go through your PowerPoint rather quickly. So I'm sure the commissioners would like to ask some questions about the options that you have related to conducting autopsies.
Sure. I've got Tracy here. Tracy's my lead investigator.
You might have to mute yours.
Oh.
Hi.
Hold on.
Click on yours.
Oh.
And then.
You're okay now.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, we'll try that again.
Rob, you're gonna call Kitsap County and tell them to rethink what they're doing. What a nightmare. God.
You're both muted.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary. You were coming clear, so go ahead with the PowerPoint. I think we're running behind.
And I'll talk. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's much better. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. We want to talk with you about autopsies today. So Washington State has a mixed system for handling deaths in each county. It's based on the county's population. So Thurston County, of course, is a coroner system. In Kitsap County, they recently converted to a medical examiner system. So that gives us 7 medical examiner offices and 16 coroner offices and 16 prosecutor coroner counties. This is important to us because Thurston County's population is now over 300,000, and that's going to allow us for a conversion to a medical examiner office when the board chooses to bring that to a vote of the people. Of note, with a medical examiner office, we will no longer be paying for autopsies on a fee per basis. And we feel that conversion will be necessary within the next 5 to 8 years, and we look forward to further conversations with the board on this matter. There is a shortage of forensic pathologists nationwide, and Washington State is no exception to that shortage. Thurston County is assisting other counties during this time by allowing autopsies to be conducted at our facility. We currently facilitate all autopsies for Mason County, Grays Harbor County, Clallam County, and occasional autopsies for Yakima and Columbia counties. Out of necessity, we've become a regional facility. The coroner's office operates under the Revised Code of Washington, which dictates which deaths come under the jurisdiction of the coroner's office and require investigations. In addition, there are 2 national associations who oversee best practices and set standards for accreditation purposes. And Thurston County is currently pursuing accreditation. Of particular interest is RCW 6850010, which specifies which deaths come under the jurisdiction of the coroner. So just a few of those very specifically mentioned are drowning, starvation, lightning, alcoholism, drug deaths, of course, but any death caused by any violence, and then any unnatural death, an unknown death, and just a sudden death when someone's young and in apparent good health. But just because it comes under our jurisdiction does not mean an autopsy. So each case is assessed and a determination is made whether an autopsy is necessary or not, and then what type of autopsy will be conducted. So we have an external exam, which would just be the outside of the body, a limited exam, only inspecting an internal section of the body, and then a full autopsy. So our deaths in our county for 2022, we had 3,145 deaths. Of those deaths, we assumed jurisdiction in 474 cases. Of those 474, we autopsied 332 of those. And then you can see we had full, limited, and external. We also had a toxicology only with a consult. And of note, with the consult cases, the forensic pathologists do not charge us for those. So just those 6 cases with a consult only saved the county between $7,000 to $12,000, depending on what type of exam would have been done. And then a breakdown of the types of cases we had. We had accidents, suicides, homicides, natural deaths, and undetermined. All of those categories were investigated. So here's a chart showing that we took jurisdiction in a very small number of deaths compared to the total number of deaths in the county. And then we did autopsies in yet a smaller number of those jurisdictional deaths. And of course, the drug-related deaths are affecting our autopsy numbers. When looking over the previous 5 years, the numbers sadly speak for themselves. We've seen a staggering increase in the drug-related deaths with more than a 300% increase over 2018. And of course, this problem is nationwide. So across the nation in 2022, there were nearly 110,000 deaths from drugs. And it's not just Washington, but unfortunately we are mentioned in a news article by the NPR with drug overdoses hitting a record surge. And then we're mentioned here because 8 states saw drug deaths continue to surge by 9% or more, with the greatest increase of 21% in Washington state. House Bill 1326 was recently passed, and it addresses office accreditation and deputy coroner investigator certification. So contrary to accreditation standards, we are cognizant of our financial resources as well as the burden it places on our forensic pathologist and our 1 technician to do all of these autopsies. So we do take a conservative approach. However, with the passage of this bill 1326, office accreditation will mandate which cases get autopsied and which type of exam is completed on those. And that will affect us starting July 1st, 2025. For example, in 2022, you saw that we conducted 80 external examinations. 33 of those would have required full autopsies under accreditation standards, which is an addition of $30,000. So some of the cases that we currently do not autopsy unless absolutely necessary are hospital deaths less than 24 hours, cases where we do a medical record review and the doctor does not actually ever see the decedent. Toxicology testing only on hospital drug-related deaths. Again, the doctor does not see the decedent. We only have the doctor interpret the toxicology testing results. And then one where the decedent is brought in where normally there would be a full autopsy, we have opted to do x-rays and an external examination only on most of our motor vehicle collisions. But under House Bill 1326, with the office accreditation requirements and meeting the standards, many of these cases will need to be autopsied as well. Of note, we would like to say thank you again for that X-ray unit that you allowed for us to get, because that does give us the opportunity to do these X-rays in-house, and that saves us a tremendous amount of money. All right, questions?
Thank you. Question, Commissioner Edwards.
Going back to page 12 on House Bill 1326.
Yes.
Where you talk about office accreditation for investigator certification. Is that a
Yes.
mandate by the state that certain things take place?
So the state has mandated that all offices become accredited. That will take effect July 1st of 2025. So we'll need to meet accreditation standards and be approved for accreditation by the outside agency who oversees that.
And
The
did they fund that?
No,
Okay, so that would be an unfunded mandate then, right?
correct, because we have to pay for the auditors to fly in and do the audit of the office.
And what's the penalty for not doing it?
You're gonna the county's gonna lose 25% of the autopsy reimbursement.
And for those autopsies that you're saying that you have to do, is that have to do discretionary?
Well, if we're gonna cut corners, then we're not following accreditation standards.
Sure, I realize that, but if we don't have any money, I don't know, did you sit in on the prosecutor's presentation just a minute ago? And
Yeah, unfortunately I did.
it's a nightmare, and so.
Can you stop sharing your screen, please?
Yeah, I just don't see, did you hear what I referred to on the alarms, Gary, about burglar alarms?
Which part?
Well, the part that we don't respond to them anymore.
Oh, no, I didn't get that one.
Okay, well, that was under my watch as sheriff, and boy, there was a lot of people unhappy about it.
I would agree.
Yeah, but there was a reason for it. We were driving in an unsafe condition, high speeds, and we were never catching anybody. We got there, you know, the bad guy was always gone, and we were jeopardizing the public. So I guess what I'm wondering here is if we don't have a similar situation of, you might have to make that tough decision if we don't give you enough money. And I don't know what that I've never been a coroner. I've always been afraid of the coroner because the coroner was the only one that could arrest the sheriff. I don't know how many of you knew that, but.
Yeah,
So I was always nice to
I'm-
the coroner in my other role.
Two things, commissioners. If it wasn't for Narcan, I can't give you a number, but we would be seeing many, many more deaths.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And then, yeah, and as far as autopsies, there's, you can give me, $50,000 or $100,000, and whatever I spend, by law, the county has to pay for those autopsies.
Well, that's
So
that's good to know,
Yeah, but your question is, where's that money come from?
Yeah.
And I totally understand.
So the question that the commissioners had, and I think it's embedded in there, it's just, you guys were going, or Tracy was going pretty fast, but, so I just want to try to distill it down. I think the question, it might have come from Commissioner Edwards, was, to what extent is discretion applied by your office in doing an autopsy versus you don't have discretion? And so if I look at 2022, you did 332, and then, if there was zero money and you were just doing what absolutely was mandated, how many would that have been of the 332? And then it sounds like that's going to tick up with this new accreditation requirement. So, just, it doesn't have to be precise, but could you give us a sense, were there any of those 332 you could have legally not done that you did, because of whatever other factors that you put into play?
Yeah, I'm sure if we had a forensic pathologist would review the case, and if it's a witness traffic accident, we can do x-rays, but we're still going to pay them the inspection fee, which would be $1,200. So instead of a full examination, they're just doing an external examination, and we do our own x-rays, and they can tell us how this person died. Other ones would be through and through gunshot wounds in suicide cases. It would be an x-ray, and then we would still have the forensic pathologist do an inspection without doing the full autopsy.
Okay. And then this accreditation piece, if I understood it right, is gonna kind of uptick the required autopsies in order to preserve your accreditation.
Correct. Because what they do, they'll come in and they're going to audit your case files. They're going to look at the cause and manner of death, and then they're going to look to see if this individual was autopsied or not.
And so applying this new standard that you think, what, right? Is it fair to say you're not doing too many more than what, like?
We're not
too many
doing.
more that the new accreditation will kind of dictate that you do?
Correct. Yeah, we should actually be doing more, and we're not.
All right, well, I think that's kind of what the board was sort of looking to see.
Well, this has been a Debbie Downer morning related to money and cents.
Well,
Yeah. Sorry about that.
thank you, Coroner. My questions got addressed, and so I just want to thank you and wish you the best of the luck with the recruiter. I know you're working with Maria on that, and hopefully that will assist us. I know that the board, when this initially came out, we kind of kicked the can down the road a little bit, hoping that the situation was going to look a little bit brighter, but it doesn't look that way. So
Yeah, you thought I was going to have better news. I do have one question though. What's the board's plan as far as looking at this location as a regional facility? Just because there's going to be a national shortage of forensic pathologists for many years because there's no one in the pipeline going to school.
Well, I don't think that question can be answered today, Gary.
Okay, but just to put it on your
Let me
radar.
Let me work with you as to, elaborate on the context of your question, then we'll bring that to the board.
Okay.
let's get someone hired first, and then we.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you,
All right,
Tracy.
thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah. Okay, it is 1:05. I apologize, Commissioners. This has
gonna
been
take hopefully only a couple minutes.
a very long morning. Okay, very quickly, this is the joint meeting with Lacey City Council, the review of the agenda. And this will take place on Thursday, June 22nd, and it's from 6 to 7 p.m.
I agree. I agree.
Okay, at 6, we'll have the introductions. At 6:10, we'll have a conversation in regards to TC Media.
Based on the recent sequence of events, we'll remove this item from the agenda,
Okay,
the TC media conversation.
okay, and then so then that will shift things up. At 6:10, we'll have the joint Thurston County Lacey joint plan for UGA. Any questions on that? Then we'll have the Martin Way corridor discussion.
That's related to the upcoming potential annexation request.
And then the annexation permitting request, that's right under that?
And yeah, it's all along the same tone of the information, yes.
And then we'll have information sharing, the wrap up next steps, and then we will adjourn the meeting. The agenda here says 7:30, so.
Yeah, I don't know, there's a heavy agenda items. Hopefully we
Yeah.
can work through this in 90 minutes. But if there's any other agenda items that you'd like to discuss, Commissioners, on the joint meeting with Lacey.
Anything?
No, not for me. Animal control, I guess we could bring that up. I don't know if that's gonna be the right time or
I
not.
just had a meeting, you asked me to bring Sarah and the sheriff before you, so I'm gonna have a pre-meeting with them first. So give me some time to work through that process as you requested. I don't think we will be ready to discuss animal service this meeting jointly with the city of Lacey because it requires a regional conversation.
So I didn't quite get this, like the meeting's scheduled for an hour, but the agenda is scheduled for an hour and a half. It's my wife's birthday, so I'm gonna need to know what the plan is for.
So, well, it's from 6 to 7:30.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we need at least that much time.
Yeah,
We can bring her here, we'll do a
I don't think a Lacey work session is what she had in mind.
talking about annexation and permitting.
As great as the Martin Way corridor discussion is likely to be.
Okay, so then with that,
Any commissioner items?
any commissioner items that cannot wait till Thursday?
Well, I've got a problem on Thursday. I've got a meeting during the time period.
Or the commissioners check-in?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's with the insurance, my
Yeah,
committee with
So
risk.
another commissioner, mentioned would like to bring an item related to agriculture advisory committee chair letter at that time, but
It doesn't have to be.
but if you're not gonna be able to
Suggested.
attend, we can cancel that meeting.
I wanted to report on the urban growth area subcommittee, but again, it's not like it has to be Thursday.
I have a couple items I would like to discuss too.
You wanna keep going? I'm good for, just keep going.
No, then we have the
We-
2
we-
PM meeting.
Go until 2 o'clock and then start our regular meeting. I don't care.
We need time for staff to reset the road, Commissioner.
So, okay, so then Commissioner Edwards won't be available on Thursday for, is there any time this week that commissioners will be available for commissioners to?
Your schedules are absolutely brutal, if I may say.
I'm gonna try and Zoom this. I'm right here. I don't know, I'll put one earplug in this here and one in the other.
I mean, we can cancel the meeting and let me check the schedule for a second.
I know it's tough to figure out, but this happens once in a while.
An hour on Thursday, I got a couple hours on Friday afternoon.
We got some time on Friday afternoon?
Friday afternoon, I do have time
This Friday?
after 1:30.
This Friday?
Yeah.
But I could shuffle whatever.
I can, Friday, are you available Friday afternoon, Commissioner Edwards?
Let's see here, I'll tell you.
I will ask the assistant county manager to help on that meeting because I'm scheduled to have a medical procedure that day.
Friday afternoon.
Okay.
Well, I
At
can do
2?
it Friday afternoon, yeah.
At 2?
Yeah.
Okay, so can we reschedule it, Commissioners check-in for Friday afternoon at 2?
Yep.
Yep, that'll work.
Okay. Okay, great. With that, it's 1:10, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
See you back here.